Welcome to Apollo City Comics. I'm Brandon.
And I'm David.
And we're here to possibly finish the last Watchmen episode ever. But you know what?
No, I think
nothing ever ends.
Yeah. No one's ever really gone. Sorry, that's the wrong reference.
Yeah, that's terrible. Should restart this whole episode down. Yeah, we're going to talk about the HBO show. Not adaptation, sequel to Watchmen.
Yeah. The remixed future is how it was advertised, right? A remixed future of Watchmen, which is kind of silly because it's not any of that. It is just a sequel.
Yeah, it's a straight up sequel. But yeah, it was labeled as a remixed future, and they tried to promote it as it wasn't connected to the comic. It wasn't anything. It was just its own entity.
Which I think is also false.
Completely false. And
yeah.
I think later on, once it came out and they finished working on it, that this was indeed their sequel to Watchmen. What did you think?
Oh, yeah. I was hoping we could just maybe talk about general impressions before spoilers. You know what I mean? In case anyone... I thought the show was very good.
Really?
It's a good show.
Good show.
It's a good show. It's 8 episodes. Or I'm sorry, is it 9?
It's 9. It's 9 episodes.
Yeah, it's 9 episodes.
Self-contained story.
Yeah. Well, you have to read Watchmen to understand what's going on, I think. There's too much in the show that a person who's never seen Watchmen or read or who has no idea what Watchmen is, they're not going to understand what's going on, especially in the later episodes. When things become like at the beginning, it seems similar in a weird way to Doomsday Clock. The beginnings feel kind of different. Mm-hmm. And then there's like a turning point and the story totally shifts, which is how Watchmen is too, really. Watchmen's kind of got one thing going and then suddenly the story's about something totally different.
Yeah, it starts off with a simple murder mystery.
Yeah.
You know, straight to the point and ends in not even nuclear war, but what would it even be labeled as? A global attack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's an otherworldly attack, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would recommend the show to comic book fans, to sci-fi fans. I would even say, just if you're into good TV dramas, you would enjoy it.
Yeah.
I would just say you should probably at least, if you don't know anything about Watchmen, at least watch the movie. That would probably be the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But then you also have to keep in mind that the differences in the movie to the comic book are
so
weird.
Big. Yeah.
So the final act is the one that's most impacted.
She's got to read the comic.
And it's discussed a whole bunch in the show. So this is really for the comic book reader.
Well, I don't know about that.
Really?
Because so much of the characters are explained in the show and their abilities and their importance that you could kind of jump in. It's like, okay, if you look at Watchmen, and I think we appreciate Watchmen because Watchmen changed the comic book game in the 80s.
Okay.
And if you realize what Watchmen was changing, that's why we appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Like if you hadn't looked back at like early 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s era comics, you probably won't appreciate Watchmen and appreciate what it changed and why it's so groundbreaking. Yeah, it's a great story, but it's groundbreaking because of its alteration to comic books.
I don't know. I think you don't even need to really read comic books to get what Watchmen's trying to say. You just need to know what superheroes are. And that's what makes the satire so easily accessible. Mm-hmm. Because everyone knows. And I guess it's
so accessible now, in a sense. It's so you're right. Yeah,
everyone knows who Batman is. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's like, everyone gets what the character's about. But in Watchmen, and I definitely don't want to get into too many spoilers here. I'm going to say light spoilers, like the lightest of spoilers. Mm-hmm. But we have a character that returns from Watchmen, who is Silk Spectre. And the show has maybe a 10-second line about who Silk Spectre's father is. Mm-hmm. And the comedian is almost not even shown at all in this whole story.
No.
It's not going to make sense, the motivations completely behind the character and how she acts, if you don't know that story. Or like,
you're right.
The Rorschach's journal. What does it even mean? They don't even really show you the journal in the show. If you watch the show first, you're going to get the impression that Rorschach's like a white supremacist. Which just isn't true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's some things that are,
I think for a deeper understanding, I don't think you need to read it. Okay.
I would even say
Let me
like
correct my
the whole
statement.
Ozymandias, as the show is settled, I guess.
Yeah.
The whole Ozymandias storyline doesn't even make sense if you don't know who that character is until the final like 2 episodes.
Mhm.
So if you're okay with being kind of like, I guess it'll kind of make sense towards the end. It's definitely not gonna be fulfilling though.
Yeah, I guess you
Yeah.
could enjoy the show
Mhm.
for the acting and the storytelling and what's involved with it, but I guess you won't fully understand. You won't understand the full spectrum of why it's so great and epic.
I'll make this point. Like imagine, and this is an extreme example because it's like the best sequel of all time, but imagine only seeing Empire Strikes Back and not watching A New Hope.
Yeah,
Can you understand the story? Yes. And you'll
Yeah.
get the characters' motivations and
Mhm.
everything, but it's not the same without understanding like the origin of it first.
It's not as gripping.
It's not
in
as
that
gripping.
sense.
So
yeah,
just read the comic book. I
Yeah,
mean,
just
you're not
read the
gonna
comic.
you're not gonna feel like it's a waste of time.
no, yeah. If anything, it'll enhance.
If you're still listening to this podcast and you haven't read Watchmen, I don't even know.
Yeah.
We've done a terrible job. You know what I mean? Because that's all we've talked about, really. Well, not really, but quite a few episodes.
almost
a good
every
percentage. Almost every.
Yeah.
There's some watching. At the very least, the podcast will make more sense.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we should dive in. Is there anything else you wanted to add about?
I not even a spoiler filled thing, but I think it earned the name Watchmen, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I'd agree. I walked away from the show feeling like it was a worthy addendum to Watchmen, like a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably the first time that I've watched. Well, I would say the movie is worthy of the name Watchmen, but this was the
But
first
it is
time.
Watchmen.
It is Watchmen.
Yeah.
But it would have been easy to mess it up. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like someone could have made a bad Watchmen movie.
Yeah. Well, there was supposed to be one made in like the early '90s or something.
Really?
Yeah.
That would have been
And
bad.
That would have been terrible.
Yeah.
Unless
Well, I don't know.
imagine a Tim Burton Watchmen.
It wouldn't have aged well for sure. That would be kind of. It'd be weird. You'd have to have like
weird. Yeah.
you'd have to have like 2 directors, like one for all the Rorschach scenes and then one for everyone else. Like it just feels different. I don't know. That would be interesting. A Watchmen movie where every character's arc is directed by a different director and they edit it all together. That could be kind of cool. I don't know if a movie's been done like that before. I know there's movies where like 4 Rooms, for instance, it's 4 tiny stories told in a hotel. One of the directors is Quentin Tarantino. It's like his least interesting thing ever made. But those are separate stories. So it's like passing the torch. It's like a creep show kind of thing, but they're connected because they're all in the same building.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a weird movie. I don't know. Anyway, it's super tangent.
Well,
Episode 1 or what?
episode 1, but real fast, one more time.
Oh, one more. Sorry, I'm sorry.
I just thought of it. But you know what? We just finished Doomsday Clock.
Mhm.
And it's striking to me, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but how similar they had the same ideas for a lot of parts of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, especially the ending.
That's interesting. They really do.
Yeah.
And even there is, for some reason, the necessity for people to want to carry on the Rorschach name
Mm-hmm.
in both.
Yeah.
So I could see
Yeah.
that too. You're right. There are a lot of similarities. And after discussing the Doomsday Clock thing, and obviously, I mean, if you haven't listened to the episode, basically we were both like disappointed by the end.
Yeah.
But
Well, the series as a whole. You know, we spent
Yeah.
2 years on the series.
the time thing really impacted it.
Yeah, that was the biggest punch in the gut.
Yeah.
But also reading that as this phenomenal show was
Yeah.
presented and ended, like as Doomsday Clock
That's hilarious.
was finally ending.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it just, the two did not compare to each other.
Well, I was thinking about what you said before, and I would go so far as to say I don't even think Doomsday Clock is really a sequel at all to Watchmen. It's a DC story
yeah.
set in like with Watchmen influence, but the Watchmen characters are not at the center of that story.
No.
Especially by the end.
Literally the DC universe is the center of
Yeah.
it. And I think that's what makes, maybe that makes my first point, is that this show, you could walk up to it, you could enjoy it, and you could read one book and you understand it.
Oh yeah.
Doomsday Clock, you could walk up to it, enjoy it, maybe,
Yeah, you might still
and then
be
you would
just
just
let down.
fall apart after issue 4 probably.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's no way you'll get it.
The beginning, it's like, oh, Batman, I can deal with this.
Yeah.
I'm a casual
these
person.
characters, like, we're getting backstory. This, all right, I see what it's setting up. It does have a setup in the beginning, you don't really need to know essentially what happened in Watchmen because it's all told and it's kind of presented. But then it all falls apart.
Yeah, it turns into just a whole like fan service.
No, yeah,
fest.
Total for fan service.
Yeah, it's really tough.
But episode 1, it's summer and we're running out of ice. David Lindelof, he wrote it. Also, I was listening to one of the interviews with him, and there was a huge writer's room for the show.
Okay.
And he gives all these writers credit. And yeah, David Lindelof is awesome. He did stuff on Lost. He did a bunch of great stuff. What was the other one? The Leftovers. Yeah, I want to check that one out.
Always a shout out for The Leftovers.
But he does always say that the writers in the writer's room contributed so much, but it happened to be his name is like the one that holds them together. But that's what the episode is essentially written by. But just want to point that out, that there was a lot of people that did work on this, and I think that's what made it so great too. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like something that's pieced together by a bunch of different ideas. It's very cohesive.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels like one tone the whole way through.
Dude, right from the start, the first 5 minutes of this episode had me blown away. I was just tripped out. I mean, and this was, I waited for the series to kind of come out a little bit before I jumped onto it, just so I could binge it, basically. And I was kind of scared to watch it. I was really scared to watch it. I wasn't sure if it was going to let me down. And, I mean, we just read Doomsday Clock. Come on. But they actually released a comic based on the 1921 event in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they presented it. And I saw it. And I was like, wow, this made me more interested. And then I saw the episode and how it started. And just knowing it's pulling straight out of reality, just like how Watchmen kind of did from the beginning. Yeah. I just thought that was an insane and eye-opening first segment for a show.
Yeah, I would agree so. The show starts with a little boy who's in a theater with his mom, and he's the only one watching the movie. It's a silent movie. That's the black sheriff. He's like a masked sheriff. Yeah. Who's taking down a... I'm sorry. I think he's a state marshal. He's taking down some local law man who's been betraying the community. That's like the plot of this little movie. Kind of in a weird way. It's not exactly it's Tales of Black Freighter, but the story comes around a lot. Like this little movie does. It keeps reoccurring throughout the show. Then his mom is playing the piano for the silent movie score.
Trust in the Law. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Then they go out into the street. We're in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it's 1921. It's the real event is what Brandon's talking about, where basically there was a bunch of successful African-American run businesses on the street, which they called the Black Wall Street. And people were booming like economically. And then some white supremacists, I mean, there's really no other way to put it. They came in and just burned all these businesses down, killed a bunch of people. It's one of like the biggest, I guess you would call it a terrorist attack, but I mean, I think it is the largest like racial based like murder in American, in modern American history, at least. Yeah. To think that this is only 100 years ago, really. Yeah. That something like this happened. It's pretty insane to think about.
It's scary. That first scene is terrifying,
Yeah, it's very visceral. It's got kind of like it's got like a Saving Private Ryan kind of quality to it, where the camera is following one character and they're kind of running through this thing. It's all crazy. It's like Battle of the Bastards or something in Game of Thrones, where you feel the pressure of the moment because of the camera work is a huge part of it. But what I love about this scene is that it hits its theme immediately. So we have a stark contrast right at the beginning of the episode. We have the Black Marshal, who's the lawman, and in this movie, when he captures this bad guy, all the townspeople that are all white, they're like cheering and applauding. They're thrilled about it. And then right outside the theater, we have the reality of just innocent Black people being killed. Yeah. It's such a Watchmen like theme to take on, like racial oppression in the United States. Yeah. It's like a perfect fit for Watchmen. Yeah. So that's cool. The show nails the themes and the major points it wants to make. It gets that 100%. So that's cool.
Yeah, that's what I loved about it. And I thought right from the get-go, like you said, this nails what Watchmen is kind of about. It's about making a point, and it's about bringing attention to something that we all kind of ignore in the background sometimes.
And that's our opening scene. And then we cut to the future time, which is really present day is what we should say. The story takes place in a couple different time periods. I mean, obviously it's Watchmen, we're going to be jumping around time, but the biggest one is present day. I guess you'd say 2019, Tulsa, Oklahoma, the same place. We have this guy who's pulled over by a cop. He's got a bunch of lettuce in his back of his truck. And it seems like they're having a friendly exchange. He asks for his license and registration. This guy opens up the glove box, and the cop spots that he has a Rorschach mask in his glove box. Then the cop says, "Oh, you give me 1 second. I got to run back to my car," or whatever. He gets to his car, and then he's calling his dispatch. And he's very panicked about it, talking about, this guy's got a Rorschach mask. I need you to release my gun. And in this future, their guns are like holstered in their car, and cops don't carry guns on them. They have to be given consent by their dispatcher or whatever to use the gun actively, which I thought was kind of like an interesting plot point.
Yeah.
That in this future, there's like a distrust of cops, kind of hitting on the Who Watches the Watchmen theme.
Yeah.
I would like to know more what exactly it is that led to this. I wasn't sure what that reasoning was, because in Watchmen, they love the cops. They hate the masked superheroes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that in this version of history where people have more support for cops, I mean, that's kind of hard to say objectively, but that their guns are locked, which I thought was kind of, I don't know, I thought it was an interesting touch.
I could definitely see where they got, just to communicate with society today on why their guns are locked.
Like a criticism of police brutality and things like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. But it's also, I guess the easiest answer for that would be that they didn't want you to tell who was the bad guy. We look at superheroes and we see the mask and we feel safe. And we look at cops and a lot of times people don't feel safe. And especially with the society that they're approaching with racism and everything. Jesus. But it's to make things really blurred for society to understand.
Especially when you put the cops in masks.
Yeah.
Then we're not sure what's going on.
Yeah. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Who's on our side? And that's kind of the big question for this whole entire show is who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? And it's kind of hard for us to see it because all the people we thought were the bad guys were the good guys. And even the clear bad guys were just like, okay, you're clearly the bad guy. But there was a question around it. Like, what's your ultimate motive behind of everything? I
could see that. I think there's some moral ambiguity. I think, this is jumping way far ahead. Well, we'll come back to this inevitably.
Oh, yeah.
I just think there's one bad guy in particular who is just like the bad guy and just such a typical superhero bad guy. Just like, this is my evil plan. You know what I mean? We'll get there though. We can talk about it more.
Okay, cool.
It would make no sense to discuss the ending during the first episode. Let me see. Oh yeah. So then this cop is shot while he's trying to get his gun released. And the guy's wearing the Rorschach mask. He shoots him with this, I don't know, little machine gun pistol kind of thing. Drives away. A thing of lettuce falls out of the back of his truck. And then this is maybe one of my criticisms for the show. It is like almost the Force Awakens of Watchmen in that it brings back a lot of the old cast. It introduces a new cast. But then the storyline is very closely interlaced with Watchmen.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't say it's as so interlaced as we built a bigger Death Star, but it's pretty close to where like they hit the same beats. So just like at the beginning of Watchmen, now in the HBO Watchmen show, we start off with a murder mystery. Okay, who did this? How do we figure it out? And really, it's not the big murder mystery. There's like a couple right at the beginning. Yeah. We're chasing multiple murder mysteries.
They hold the main murder. I don't even think it's in episode 1. Is it? Or maybe it's episode 2.
I think it is episode 2.
And that's where the big...
Oh, no, it is the end of episode 1.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, yeah.
I think, there's a murder in the beginning of it, but it's still, like you said, it hits the same beats as Watchmen does.
Yeah.
And the main murder mystery is where it starts. And I think that's what's cool about it, too, is that, cool. I've said this before on the show, is that if you want us to enjoy something, get it right first. Like if you want us to enjoy a superhero movie, just make the direct adaptation of it.
Okay.
And when you stray too far, that's where you lose a lot of us and we criticize it so much more. But by sticking to a very similar formula that Watchmen had, I think that's what kept us all gripped in as well. Because if they would have strayed too far, look at Doomsday Clock.
Oh, that's a great example. It's totally different.
Yeah.
But at the same time, nerds are unsatisfiable. Because you make Force Awakens, which is the same thing essentially, added with a couple of like really different kind of like emotional ideas. I mean, spoiler alert for Force Awakens, but at this point, like Han Solo dying, for instance.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Obi-Wan death in New Hope, but it has a way heavier feeling to it, I think, than the other ones. But then a bunch of people will hate on that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's inevitable that you really can't please anyone, especially Star Wars fans. Star Wars fans complain more than any other fan group, period.
Let me stray real fast. But who's the one girl that's in The Last Jedi that...
Rose?
Is that her name? Yeah. They were giving a bunch of controversy on why she didn't have more lines and a bigger part.
Oh, yeah.
In Rise. And I'm like, why?
I'm like, guys, stop.
She wasn't an important character. She was basically pointless, to be honest.
Well, they said that it was because a lot of her scenes were with Carrie Fisher and that they didn't finish them. That's the story. I'm going to say what really happened is that people hated on her so much. She had to like quit social media. People were like hating on her so much
because she was a bad character.
Obviously, let's not put her in the next one.
Yeah.
So then they take her out, and then everyone complains she's not in it.
And it's like,
what happened to Rose? I'm like, who are
she
you,
wasn't
dude?
important. Yeah. Nobody cared.
Like, weren't you complaining 2 years ago?
Exactly. Exactly.
It's so crazy.
But sorry.
I know. I
had to voice that. Like,
I 100% agree with you, dude. It drives me crazy.
Yeah. And this is the worst. This is like the biggest box office fail for Star Wars.
This one has earned the least, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's
why.
I don't know if it's less than Solo or...
I'm not too sure about that.
I think Solo might be the lowest. I know it's the lowest of this trilogy. I can say that for sure.
I think it's worse than the prequel. Well, even reviews are worse than the prequels. It's like bottom of the list Star Wars.
Crazy.
And that doesn't make any sense because it's the best thing since the original trilogy.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I would say so too.
Right?
Sorry, even more of a tangent. So many people on the internet are like, Rogue One it's that website that you read all the time, Comic
CBR?
Book News, CBR.
Yeah.
Some guy put out some article that's like, Rogue One's the best Star Wars movie of this whole group. I'm like, who? But then everyone, I see a lot of people reposting it. I'm just like, who are these people that think Rogue One is the best?
Dude,
like,
and I waited so long to see Solo because I thought it'd be trash. And it was way better.
It's way better than Rogue One, right?
Way better.
I feel like I'm talking an alien language or something. I don't get it. I don't get why people like it.
Why didn't we get Shadows of the Empire instead of Rogue One? That was a story worth telling.
Yeah.
This one wasn't.
Okay, one last part to my rant. This guy I know, Star Wars fan, he puts this post online. And in his post, he's like, I hate the new trilogy. They got rid of Yuzan Vong. They got rid of all the expanded universe. Rogue One is the only good one of this whole thing. And then I was like, well, dude, what about Kyle Katarn? What about our boy Kyle Katarn?
Yes, Kyle.
So like Yuzan Vong you're crazy about? But Kyle, we can erase this guy for Jyn Erso, the lamest Star Wars character ever. Like, anyway,
whatever. Yeah, right. I know. Yeah,
I can't go further. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get upset. Back to Watchmen, HBO.
But you know what? That formula that they're doing and presenting, it's so that us as viewers can. I mean, it's the Watchmen universe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like every Batman story is essentially the same. Every Superman story is essentially the same.
Yeah. Why do
you know what I mean?
Pass?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things that they just had to match that tone and line things up just right, but change the colors so that it's a new acceptable thing.
And I will say this. It feels like when I was watching Force Awakens, there were moments in the theater was like, oh, this is exactly what they did before.
Yeah.
This show, it doesn't feel that way.
No.
You got to dig a little bit deeper
Mm-hmm.
to really like connect the dots and be like, oh, okay. Especially towards the end of the show, it ends in a similar kind of way too.
Mm-hmm.
But by then, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It treads the same path
Mm-hmm.
without like kicking it into the ground. It's like,
yeah.
it feels
fresh.
It's like a
every
nod.
episode.
It's like a nice little nod.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
So,
and
I'm
I think
down.
that's a super appropriate.
Mhm.
And I think that takes some crazy skill to not just like, oh, we're going to just kind of do the original one, but
Mhm.
apply it here. You know, they're not just layering stuff. They're literally building upon it. And that's what makes it so different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Episode.
Well, this is still one. We're
Yeah.
introduced to a lot of people. We're introduced to the police chief who, when I was watching the show, I was like, is this supposed to be Veidt? And then immediately I was like, no, this isn't him. This is someone else. The police have secret identities. Like we said before, they're all in masks. We learn about this event later, but basically the cops are trying to hide their identities. And we're introduced to a couple people. There's Looking Glass,
Yes.
who is the Rorschach of this universe. He's kind of paranoid. He's got this connection to his mask as part of his identity. He really can't like take it off at all. And he's played, and I'm trying to look it up on my phone real quick because of course I didn't write his name down. He's played by a Coen Brothers regular. And that's Tim Blake Nelson.
Oh, okay, cool.
Who's a great actor. And if you've
Awesome.
seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? He's like the dumb one in that. He's the
That's
dumb
where
one
I
of the
saw him
trio.
before. Yeah, okay, cool.
Fantastic actor, does a great job as Looking Glass.
I thought his character was so awesome.
Yeah, his character, he's one of my favorites
Yeah.
of the show. One of the most interesting, I think.
And I see that contrast between him and Rorschach, and I think it fits so well.
Yeah.
I think him having a different mask than Rorschach makes so much sense too, because how Rorschach is represented now in this universe, and what he's kind of become to be in this future, which is actually present day, which is super important. Because Watchmen did take place in 1985 or 86, and this is 2019.
And they keep track of all the event, like it's like
everything.
what would have happened if Watchmen really happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's actually a couple nods to that in the first episode. We find out that like Nixon was president, and then after Nixon was president for however long it was,
like 8 terms or something. Yeah.
Then Robert Redford becomes president, the actor, and then he's been president for years and years and years. So it's like history was kind of the same. There's a poster of the presidents in a class, and it's like George Washington, blah, 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 like Alexander Hamilton. And then it's like Richard Nixon and then Robert Redford. And it's like, whoa, what's going on? Vietnam is a state.
Yeah.
Because we won the Vietnam War and took it over.
And you notice the flags are all circles and they have 51 stars on them too.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
The police have an Archie. They have a flying.
Yeah. And I thought that was really confusing at first, but I love the explanation behind it.
Yeah. They say that they got like Dan's plans, right?
Yeah. They got Dan's plans because they arrested Dan, and they actually arrested
Silk Spectre, right?
Silk Spectre because they broke the Keene Act. So once they discovered who they were under fire, and Dan's in jail right now.
Yeah.
Which is why we don't see him, why we don't hear from him.
It also really bummed me out because Dan was always one of my favorite characters, and he's the only one missing.
He's the only one missing, but he didn't have enough groundwork to bring back, I don't think.
Yeah.
Like Dan's like not an interesting character.
And if they don't have if the story's not there, then why?
Yeah. Why throw it in? They didn't waste it.
But at the same time, you're telling me that Sally Jupiter, is her name? No, her name's not Sally, right? Which one is the older or the younger Silk Spectre, the daughter? Jane, no.
Oh my gosh.
I always forget. Sally's the old one.
Yeah. Gosh, man, we've only read this.
We've only read so many of these things, you know what I mean? And I can't think of it's slipping my mind right now. But it's kind of ridiculous that they got arrested together and then somehow she becomes like an FBI agent. Like, I don't think the world works that way, that you can break a law like the Keene Act and then later become
Lori,
there we go.
I don't know why I forgot that.
Yeah. Lori.
Well, I think she made a deal because of her dad being who he is. You know,
Maybe she sold Dan out and
well, not sold Dan
pre-dealed
out,
him.
but like was like, well, I mean, I could do this for you guys because I can do this. Like
I guess it's true.
Dan didn't have any leverage, and Dan, I'm glad he wasn't in here because Dan didn't have any trauma to like bring him back. Like Dan became Night Owl because he wanted to become Night Owl.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and Lori became Night Owl because her mother forced it upon
Silk
Spectre, because her mom forced it upon her. And I think that's something that's super cool is that she was her mother as a child and growing up, and now she's an adult and she's her father and has even taken her father's name.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I was noticing that too. I thought an interesting choice for the character too, considering all that she knows. But you could tell at the end of Watchmen that she felt like bad after finding out the comedian was dead.
Yeah.
And that it was her dad. She like really struggled with that. We are also introduced to the 7th Cavalry, which is the white supremacist group. They're like the baddies of the show.
Yeah.
They all wear Rorschach masks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to get into the mask thing right now, but this is actually one of my problems with the show. I don't understand it. And I honestly hope that I'm not right. I hope that there's an explanation that I missed watching it.
What do you think?
Why does everyone... Okay, I can understand people reading Rorschach's journal and him talking about the filth in the streets and all this stuff. Someone being able to construe that into a white supremacist thing and turning it into some kind of mantra. But it's clear that Rorschach's journal has been published, that it's widely pushed around, and no one acknowledges that Veight's the one who made the space monster. And that is really... Like, it's still a surprise in the show. It's a plot point that people discover, what? It was fake? Everyone thinks it's real this whole time?
Yeah.
That was the whole point of the scene at the end of Watchmen. Of, like, them killing Rorschach, the viewer being, or the reader being like, what? Like, no one's going to know what really happened? And then those last couple panels where we see that Rorschach had put his journal in that newspaper. You know what I mean? And then we click that together in our heads.
Yeah.
Oh, like... They're going to read this. They're going to find out what happened.
Yeah.
So there's no explanation of that, though.
And they did. They found out that it was Veidt. They blame Veidt for it because the journal came out and everyone read it. And everyone was like, hey, this is saying that Veidt did all this and he was the mastermind behind all this. But this is coming from this madman sociopath that has been deemed insane. Okay. And he's not a trusted source.
So they just don't believe him.
They just don't believe him at first. And then they start putting pieces together. Veidt mysteriously disappears. And they're doing a search for like 8 years to find Veidt. And because they go to the Antarctic base, they can't find him. And they're just like, we're going to assume him dead. And it could have been the Vietnamese because it could have been an inside
Is that
attack.
supposed to be the time where he's in that other place? We won't talk about that yet. But that doesn't make any sense because that's only been 8 years. So that's 2011. So it took them 35 years to figure out that it was him when the journal's been there the whole time since 1985?
No, they did something where it was like something happened in like 1995 or something.
I don't know. But Looking Glass doesn't know. Because when he discovers this later, he's like, what?
Well, because they don't announce that it was all fake.
That's what I'm saying, though. No one knows, but everyone's reading the journal. So, like, the world should know. It's a madman's
journal.
I guess, but still,
it's not like a credible source.
You think people would have been like, we need to look into this. It's the most credible source there is. He was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's Rorschach.
I guess that's true, but obviously the book is being sold millions of times and there's all these disciples of his journal. At the very least, there'd be a movement to arrest Veidt. And everyone would know. You know what I mean?
But they even interviewed Veidt, and this was in the... So, just like Watchmen, which I thought was phenomenal about this show too, is that they made, just like Alan Moore did at the end of every issue, they had those like columns or part of Under the Hood and stuff like that. When you read one of the articles in this, it explains all that in the first article.
Really?
Yeah.
In the very first article?
Yeah. As a matter of fact...
okay, well then you know what? I'm going to be even more upset then, because they should have put that in the show. That's too big of a plot thing to leave as something you need to read on the internet. That's like people being like, oh, you didn't like Last Jedi? Oh, you just got to read this comic book series and it explains all these plot holes. It's different when you're making TV.
Yeah, it is. And I can agree with that for sure.
That's crazy.
But it wasn't until you brought it up last time we hung out. And then I was just like, dang, you're right. I want to find the moment where they explained it because I thought they did.
Yeah.
And I went back, and on this website, it tells you the interview that Veidt had, and he was just like, no, he literally says it's fake news.
Oh, see, that really bugs me now then, because they should have put that in the show. That would have been such a good little scene.
Yeah.
Of 1990s Veidt just being like, it's fake news.
Yeah.
That bothers me. Well, at least there is an official explanation. So
and then with the Squidfall thing, it's like, well, the reason why everyone believed it still, no matter what, is that squids were still falling across the country.
And that was a big thing.
Yeah.
And he does it as a reminder.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We'll get there too.
But does that make sense? Does that
that makes more sense to me. It just bothers me that I feel like you can't do that in the storytelling medium.
Oh, I know. I literally did this research.
When it's attached, yes.
Yeah, because it's part of the book.
It's the last 2 pages. You just got to read it.
You got to read it, yeah.
Yeah.
But I literally I didn't look at this website. I'm not going to lie. I didn't look at it till earlier today because I remembered you brought it up. And I was like, yeah. And it was really just to prove you wrong at that point. That's the only reason I wanted to find out.
And this is like an official HBO website, right?
Yeah, it's part of them. One of the main guys wrote all this. And dude, it is legit. It looks straight out of... Like if Alan Moore did something like this. Like it is crazy. So cool. It has files, it has documents, it has reasons why this website exists.
Yeah.
Everything.
Well, hopefully they don't delete that website.
I don't think so. I mean, for it to still be up, it has to be up. Because it's really important. And I would love to give the show a second watching. I didn't have time to do it before this podcast. But
to read them in order and everything.
Yeah, just to go, watch an episode, read all these files, let it sink in. Dude, we'll do another watch an episode
Director's cut.
Yeah. It'll be 4 hours long, but we'll do it.
Well, this episode ends, and most of them end with a Veidt scene. And in a weird way, he is the Tales of the Black Freighter in a weird kind of roundabout way. We have 2 concurrent storylines going on. We learned a little bit about each.
I took it more as in, what was it called? I wrote it down. The American Hero story. Because that was a TV show within a TV show, and we had a comic within a comic and a Watchmen.
Then that's true too, yeah. But you know what? I feel like we didn't get enough of that show. I almost wish that this show was longer. I wish it was 12 episodes, and I wish that we got more of that behind the... Because basically, in the universe of this show, they're now airing a docu-series of what happened in Watchmen.
Yeah.
And it goes back all the way to Minutemen.
Yeah, it's the Minutemen story.
Yeah.
Honestly, the one reason I was really happy with how short those scenes were was I was so sick of those Carson parts and Doomsday Clock. The detective stuff. And I was just like, cool, but you made it brief. Thank you. Because I really didn't care.
And you're right. They don't feel heavy. There was sometimes even in Watchmen where I was like, I don't really want to read Tales of the Black Freighter. You know what I mean? I'm just like, sometimes honestly, I'm into it, and then sometimes I'm like...
It's great. It's experimental, but I think the majority, if not 100% of the freaking Watchmen fans could be like, I could have done without that, as a whole.
Story would have been just as good.
Yeah.
But he had to make some point about telling a story in a story, I guess.
Yeah. Great writing skills. Yeah. Great storytelling skills. But
and the man's just more ambitious than
almost ever.
Anyone. Yeah, it's crazy. Veidt scenes are weird. He's in this castle.
What in the world is going on with him every time?
There was something that I caught in the first episode, and it makes sense later on. There's a quick shot of a TV where it shows Dr. Manhattan on Mars with the exact castle that Veidt lives in, made out of sand, and then he crushes the whole thing. And I was like, what? So when it showed up at the end of the episode, I thought that, that might mean something. It definitely does. But he's there with these 2 servants. They're bringing him a birthday cake with 1 candle on it. He's celebrating his birthday alone. There's newspapers saying that he's dead. That's laying all over the place. The castle he's living in, I put that in my notes. The same thing as Manhattan had. He's writing he's writing a play, The Watchmaker's Son.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
A tragedy in 5 acts. And then we get some clock ticking during the dinner scene. There's a lot of that in the show, to maybe show that time is running out. It's a little bit of an anticipation kind of build too.
Gosh, I'm spacing out the word. Not like a theme, but like a motif.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A motif. Great. Yeah. And actually, I have another motif I want to touch on. they use so much classical music, specifically when Vight's on screen.
Yeah.
And for the first 6 episodes, they have a different piece of music every time he shows up. And I was getting super excited. And then 7 and 8, they drop the ball and they don't add any more music.
Really? I didn't pay attention.
Yeah. So the first one is Mozart's Requiem, which is almost his theme in the show. It plays all the time he's on there. I mean, just a fantastic piece of music. And I just thought it was really interesting. It was like kind of a nod to his classiness, you know what I mean? His high status.
Intellectual,
prowess. I do have to say, I think Veidt is portrayed in kind of a dumb way.
Really?
Like, I think that he seems so overcome with failure that we could almost never imagine the Ozymandias of Watchmen getting to that point.
Yeah.
But I guess, seeing his plans slowly fail and crumble.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing behind him.
And maybe it's caused him to question his own intelligence. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Was my plan really the right plan? Like,
well, because he did all this for them to stop doing things, and now they're making nuclear weapons again. And he's like, guys, I fixed everything for you, and you guys still messed it all up.
Murdered like 3 million people. You know what I mean? And he's not a bad guy. Like, he doesn't see himself as a bad guy. Most people who read the book probably do, I guess. But he sees it as, I killed 3 million, but I saved the world.
Yeah.
So when they start, when he sees the world going away from the lesson, quote unquote lesson he taught, then the reality of like killing 3 million people maybe is hitting him harder. Yeah. So I think that's a big part. But that's episode 1.
Yeah.
Whew. Man, it's gonna be a long podcast. Maybe we should really hop through some of these other episodes, like just like hit the big things.
I mean, let's run through it because there's so many things
so much
I want to just talk about.
And honestly,
not hold in.
I didn't think this was gonna be as difficult.
It's because what I said earlier. Well, this will be a short episode.
This will be a short episode today. Of course not. Okay, so I'm sorry. There's also a scene we missed in the first one where the police chief is hung from a tree by a man in a wheelchair.
Yeah, the murder that kicks it off everything.
And in episode 2, we find out. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. We missed one more thing in episode 1. Our protagonist of the show. We didn't talk about her at all.
No.
Angela. She's one of the police. She is what's her superhero name?
Sister Knight.
Sister Knight. And
too cool.
She's cool. She's like kind of got this like nun aesthetic in a weird way, but like she's just a really interesting character.
Thought, they explain it later on, but at first I was really confused on her purpose and her meaning in her outfit. But the main thing about all these people is that they have amazing origin stories. And they're all real similar because think about Batman's origin. Batman has 2 origins. He has the night his parents were killed and the night that he declared that he was going to become a bat.
Yeah.
And all of these superheroes have that double origin story that shapes them.
Yeah, like traumatic event, when I put the mask on.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
And I thought that was such a perfectly executed thing to like give purpose behind each one of them.
It feels really good too the way the story's told because just like Watchmen, we get one character's backstory at a time and we're not sure whose order it's in. But once you get to that character's backstory, everything they've done makes more sense.
Yeah.
So it's a cool way to like contextualize the characters.
And it all kind of gets peeled forward to where you're not, I keep doing this, but compared to Doomsday Clock, we got the origin of Mime and Mariette and then you're just like, it was a full issue and you're like, all right, I didn't really need to know that because it didn't really mean anything overall. It was just a story to be told. But each one of these guys' movements and actions and events that happen to them, they shape them more like Batman was, something happened and it shaped them. Unlike the other sequel we saw where it's like, this shaped them, but it wasn't like concrete enough to us to be like, man, now I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can get that. Let me see here. Episode 2, I'm just gonna hit the big things that happen. We have
episode 2 real fast before you start. There's that World War II letter in episode 2 where it has the Germans trying to recruit black people into
The Nazi army.
Yeah, into the Nazi army.
Saying, hey, American people don't even appreciate you.
And that letter was real.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't know that one was real, but I knew that was a thing that they did.
And that was a legit letter that they used.
Wow. And that really comes into the story because at the beginning, that little boy who's surrounded by all that chaos, he's sent away, and that's the letter that's sent with him.
Yeah.
But on the back of it, they write, protect this child.
Yeah.
Because his parents died there at the event. Yikes, man. We almost could have done like a weekly episode, like just talking about the show one episode at a time. It's so long. So episode 2, the big things that happen. American Hero Story is rated X, which I thought was interesting. This show that they're showing.
Yeah.
It's got a big parental advisory thing on it. One little quick complaint I had about this episode. There's a Hooded Justice intro where they show Hooded Justice like beating up people in American Hero Story. And they still keep like the Zack Snyder style slow motion fight, which I thought was just like super. Maybe it was a reference to the movie.
I think it was. I think
it was just
if you
so
look
cheesy.
at their costumes and everything, I think that was total. Let's use Zack Snyder's outlook into this because it's a remake of history, just like Snyder's film was a remake, but twisted. You know what I mean?
We have, and I wrote in my notes, Jane is a baddie, which is the police chief's wife.
Yeah.
In the second episode, I was like, this lady's up to no good.
Oh yeah, you could just tell.
You could tell for sure. There's a scene where Angela goes there to pay honor to him, but also to kind of like investigate what's going on with the police chief. She wants to know how he was murdered. She found the man in the wheelchair who is claiming all of these crazy things.
And I think that's such a cool moment because he's saying that he killed the chief.
Yeah.
And you're just like, no way. No way. Like you find it impossible to believe. And it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
Like,
and then
how?
they tell you how, and you're like, okay.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. When Angela is there at the chief's house investigating, she finds that there is a Klan outfit in the chief's bedroom, hidden in his closet behind this like secret door, the same way that they find the comedian's outfit doing the first investigation of his home.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
They even talk about only bad men keep things in their closets or something like that. They have like a line referencing that.
Who watches The Watchmen? I wrote it again in my notes. One other thing, we got Keen running for president.
I thought that was too cool to introduce. Is it Keen? It has to be Keen's son.
It's I guess. Yeah, because he would have been way too old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then in the Veidt storyline, we have Veidt rehearsing the play. And it's the scene of John going back in to grab the watch.
I love it. That was so cool.
And he sets this guy on fire.
Yes.
And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
They also have a guy playing Dr. Manhattan who's got a blue mask on. He is still hanging. He's still freely swaying.
Which I thought that was cool.
That was pretty funny. And it's also funny because when Dr. Manhattan comes out, we get another classical music piece. It's Wagner. It's the Valkyries or Valkyries, just like in the Zack Snyder movie that they use in that big Dr. Manhattan scene. So I thought that was kind of a cool little connection too.
I love how it took me a moment to realize it, but the Veidt scenes, you could tell time is not running the same way as it is in the show.
You know something's off.
Yeah, because the first time we see him, he's writing a play. The second time we see him, he's rehearsing a play. Yeah. The next time we see him, and it's not even spoilers, but like he's hunting a buffalo and he gets stopped. And then the next time you see him, you see buffalo fur on the ground. Yeah. So clearly time is just out of whack. And I think
it seems like he's like in a Groundhog Day scenario or something.
Yeah.
Where he's just reliving the same day or something like that. Yeah. Let's see here. Episode 3 starts off with this like bank heist. And there's like a bricklayer joke at the beginning. There's this big joke thing, kind of feels like Watchmen, like Rorschach telling jokes. But then we find out that it's like an FBI sting operation to capture this mask guy. They staged a bank robbery to get a mass vigilante to come in just to be busted.
To me, that was like, what if Batman existed in the Watchmen universe? That's what that looked like to me.
Yeah, I can see that. There's like a weird Pulp Fiction reference in this episode. So basically, we're introduced to Lori again. She's the secret agent. There's a scene of her like opening up this briefcase.
Yeah.
And light shining out of it.
Yeah.
And it feels so much like Pulp Fiction. But even to add on to that, the briefcase code is 666, which is the same code in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, wow.
So there's like a double like Pulp Fiction briefcase thing going on in there, which I thought was kind of crazy.
And that briefcase, whoa.
I don't remember what's in the briefcase again.
Isn't this the dildo scene?
Oh, you know what? I think it is actually. Well, I think that scene's later, but I think that's what we're supposed to assume it is.
Okay.
Because she opens it up and there's this like big blue light.
It has to be. And then it has like the Esquire magazine of her and Dr. Manhattan dating.
Yeah.
I thought that was just like...
It's a Esquire magazine. It's got like Silk Spectre hanging on Dr. Manhattan, and the title of the magazine is like Lori Takes Manhattan or something like that.
Something like
or
that,
no,
yeah.
Silk Spectre Takes Manhattan or something. And I was like, wow.
Oh, yeah.
And then she's got this
massive
blue vibrator.
Yeah. Which is funny because you see Dr. Manhattan thing out the entire time.
Yeah.
So it's just...
But it seems like it was like a licensed thing. Like,
yeah.
People were just selling these in stores like, oh, Dr. Manhattan.
Right. Yeah.
It's just really funny, but it would happen.
And it's funny because you see her character. She goes to the little agent that she has with him. Oh, I don't know. Do we say this that Lori's working with the FBI or CIA or something?
I said that she's the agent in the sting operation. But yeah, she's an FBI agent. She's got this little underling who really knows the history of Watchmen and Minutemen. And he kind of...
Oh, he was a history major.
He's a history major. Yeah. And then he... Laurie keeps acting like he's really like fangirling really hard, but he really never does.
He never does. She just assumes.
She assumes that. Probably because she's been surrounded by that her whole life. But he's actually just kind of, he's like an everyday kind of guy.
Do you think he was that lube guy?
I forgot about that.
Because he just appears that once, right?
Weird. I totally forgot it. I honestly forgot about that character.
I don't know what the point of him was.
He was taking pictures. Did we see those pictures later? Maybe it's something we missed.
Maybe it's in the PETA, whatever it's called.
PDpedia?
Yeah, PDpedia.
Maybe. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it was him because it's the same body type.
Right?
Yeah.
That lanky, skinny dude, like obsessed with superheroes.
Yeah, we get a bunch of backstory here. Night Owl's locked up. Before we really know that the FBI agent is Lori, we see like Watchmen posters in her house. Like they don't tell you right away, but you get the idea pretty soon. There's this weird scene of Lori in this like phone booth that's supposed to be designed to call Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Because he's worshipped like a god.
Yeah.
So people can call him from these phone booths, and it says that they're sending him to Mars so that he can hear him. And she goes there and... she
tells a joke.
She tells a joke.
Which is very much a Rorschach joke.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She's going by Blake. She's going by her dad's last name. We already touched on that. Oh, we also get a big scene about the bomber trying to kill at the funeral. So there's a funeral for the chief, and this guy who's running for Senate is there. And this bomber comes out and is going to kill the senator.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like standing still. The bomber's got a gun to the senator's head. He's behind him. And he's like, my vest is wired. If my heart stops beating, it's going to blow up and everything. And then Lori just pulls out a gun and shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
Like
she thought he was...
thought he was bluffing, yeah. And Angela ends up saving the day by like throwing the guy's body into the hole that was dug.
Shoving the casket.
And then shoving the casket with the sheriff inside of it.
I thought that was too cool.
On top of the hole.
That was 100%, and it's going to spoil it, but 100% an Ozymandias moment. The fake assassination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because the gunner thought it was real, just like the assassin thought it was real when he was going for Ozymandias.
That is true. Man, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities.
Like some of those elements, they're the same thing, but I'm like, you guys pulled it off. That's the cool part. You guys didn't like. It wasn't a ripoff. You know, sorry, Frank. For a perfect example, you didn't realize that till right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like, for you
good.
to really think about it and be like, oh, I see the connections.
Yeah.
That's what makes it a great story for Watchmen.
I think so. It's just so amazing that they can hit all the beats and not feel the whole time like we're just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Because everything else in the story is so different. Like the setting is completely different.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when the show started being like, how are they going to do this?
Me too. I was like
Watchmen's
Tulsa?
like New York.
Yeah.
You know
I was
what
like,
mean?
what are you doing in Tulsa, Oklahoma?
But then we even learned the connections between like the characters and I don't know. It's crazy. What else happens here? Oh, we get this weird thing. We get another piece of the Vite puzzle of him shooting this man out of a catapult in this like makeshift scuba suit kind of looking thing.
Yeah.
And then like it coming back and him being frozen.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa.
What's he doing?
What's
and
he
you can
doing?
assume like I thought he was shooting him into space to like escape.
Yeah.
Maybe he could shoot himself back. And that's when you kind of realize, is he like trying to get to the moon? Is he trying to get to Mars?
Yeah.
Like, where is he trying to get?
What exactly is he doing?
Because you figure he's on Earth.
And you just get more and more. In this fight scene, we get two pieces. We get Prokofiev and we get some of the Carmen Suite by Bizet. So we get two more great classical pieces. And then the episode ends with a car falling from the sky.
Yeah.
Which I guess we didn't mention. Sorry,
Oh,
I didn't take it in my notes in the previous episode. Angela's car is lifted by this magnet that looks like a magnet from what's the word? A junkyard, like when they crush the cars up.
Like in Breaking Bad.
And then like in Breaking Bad. And then it's dropped from the sky in this next episode. And it's funny because she's just getting off the phone with this Dr. Manhattan booth, like talking to him, like asking for a sign pretty much, and then leaves and car drops right in front of her. And she thinks it's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah. She's laughing hysterically.
Yeah.
And this is also the scene where we see the museum for reparations. And I thought that was such a unique thing, is that they have the Redford reparations for anyone that was affected in the Tulsa massacre. If you were somehow attached to that family in that bloodline, you would get reprimanded and get benefits of some sort. Reparations for what happened to your family. And this is where our main character, what's your face? Sister
Angela.
Knight, Angela. Yeah, I was thinking her code name. Where Angela's trying to figure out what if this guy's telling the truth, that it's her grandfather. Because she's like, this is unbelievable. And so she's breaking in, and that's where she's trying to get information from. And I thought that was a really cool and unique way to do it. Like in that museum where they show the historical aspect of it all, and it looked gorgeous too. And also, if you look at the lighting for a lot of these moments, they have the same blue as Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There's a lot of blue representation for sure.
Yeah, when she's looking at the tree and getting answers where things are literally descending in front of her, it's like information like Dr. Manhattan has.
That's good, Brandon. That's good stuff. Let's see. Well, in 4, it's more of the family tree thing. She goes to that place. Well, when she's there, she learns that this old man is her grandfather. So that's already like one mind-blowing thing. And then she sees that there's a new branch on her family tree as well. And then the beginning of episode 4 jumps to the end of episode 3, where she's coming out of the museum and the car falls and Laurie's standing there.
Yeah.
There's a weird relationship between Laurie and Angela. Angela's trying to solve this case, but she doesn't want to let Laurie know what she knows, especially because she should have reported this black man that she found at the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
No one else knows about it but Angela. But especially now that she knows that it's her grandfather and she's never met like most of her family. Well, she met them, but she feels protective, I think.
Yeah.
It's her last relative.
Which makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And it makes more sense the further you go in the show. I
will say this. Up to this point in the show, we're on episode 4, about episode 5-ish, right?
Yeah.
What I really like is that the show is confusing, but it's not like I don't understand it, I don't get it confusing. And everything does pay off. And that's the greatest part about this show, is that it's not, when you watch Twin Peaks, at a certain point, you're just like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
What is going on and why?
I know there's a bunch of Twin Peaks fans.
I like Twin Peaks, and I like it for the bizarrety about it, the absurdness about it all. But it's not like a phenomenal show because none of it really pays off in the end, you know?
I mean, I remember trying to watch Twin Peaks, getting into the second season and being like, I can't take anymore.
No, second season's terrible.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll get around. I heard the newest season was amazing.
What I was always told, because I have the people I go to Comic-Con with are huge Twin Peaks fans.
Okay.
Like huge. And they always say, watch up to episode like 10 of season 2.
Yeah.
And skip it all, watch the last episode, and pick up on season 3.
Weird.
Because apparently that entire middle section has nothing to do with anything.
What?
Yeah.
That bugs me too. And if you're gonna watch the original Star Trek, or if you're gonna watch Next Generation, just skip season 1. Start on season 2, episode 5. I'm like, what?
No, just make it worth it. But I think it's because David Lynch was no longer, or one of the other writers was no longer a part of the show for a while.
So kind of threw it off.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the key elements that we all loved and the storytelling aspects disappeared. I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments.
Man, there was something I was going to toss in there, and it's just fled my brain. I'm sure it'll come back.
You know, it's really weird trying to we never go over TV shows. Have we ever gone over a TV show?
Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, but that was more like... Oh, we did do that, huh? You know, it's always weird going over the TV shows because it's not like a comic where the TV show has so much going on at once that it's hard to break down part by part because we see the full scope. The way the comics are written is that it's an individual chapter practically. Yeah. And these are too, for sure. But I want to jump ahead on every single... We could just basically break it down by every character.
Yeah, we really could. And the only part that gets sketchy is the end where they all clash.
Yeah.
That's the only weird part. It is strange too, because on one of these podcasts, we'll sum up a 6-issue run.
Yeah.
Which is not even close to 9 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're talking about 9 hours of TV. We're talking about so much story.
It doesn't take us 9 hours to read any of these comics.
Yeah. That's like a trilogy of Star Wars. You know what I mean? 9 hours.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot to talk about a whole trilogy. I remember what I was going to say. Back to your comment about, things being confusing. It's very Lost, where at the beginning of watching the show Lost, you keep getting introduced to all these details that don't quite make sense, but you're intrigued to find out what they mean.
Yeah.
And some of it is resolved in Lost and some of it is not. But in this show, it is satisfying because you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Let me just keep hopping through here. Episode 4, we're introduced to this Asian woman.
Lady True.
Yeah.
I love her character.
She bought Veitz Corporation out, and she's building this giant clock. The Millennium Clock. Again, a big, huge theme about clocks and Watchmen. And the idea of the clock reaching, in this case, it's activating.
Yeah.
And Watchmen, we're waiting for it to strike 12. Mm-hmm. And we're waiting for this moment throughout both series.
To see what happens. Yeah.
Exactly. Because we don't know what's going to happen. We just know something big is going to happen. We know she's connected to Granddad. We get some weird Veidt scenes in this episode where he's pulling these fetuses out of a lake.
Yeah. And choosing them fruit or vegetables to see which one's right.
He puts them in this aging machine, and you could have caught it before this, but it's finally nailed in that there's only 2 people there and they're clones.
Yeah.
So his female and male servant, they're just all clones of each other. We get the Allegretto from Beethoven's 7th, just a great piece of music. Again, hitting it out of the park. And then we see Veidt launching dead clones through the air, which is just hilarious.
And you see that, is this the one where he ends up launching himself?
Not yet. That's the next one. It takes so long for the Veidt story.
And the Veidt stories, I think I don't know. I love how he portrayed the character because I think he's lost his mind at this point. And especially in the position he's at, he's done, For the greatest man on earth to fail at his one true purpose, he's done.
And now he's basically an exile.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he doesn't give up hope entirely, and we'll get there. We also have, oops, I accidentally did something on my note page. I deleted all of them. No, we end the scene with the granddad getting out of his wheelchair and us finding out that he can walk this whole time, which is, kind of an old school twist, but I thought it was just funny. There's always a big twist in all these. Episode 5, one of my favorite episodes. We start off in Hoboken, New Jersey.
I love this.
This episode's great.
I absolutely adored this episode.
I don't know if you caught this, but they play the song Careless Whisper 5 or 6 times throughout this episode. And it's all different interpretations of it. Like there's an instrumental version. There's like all these different, there's like a cover of this like girl singing the song. And it comes on so much during this episode.
Oh, wow.
And it's really weird. Well, the beginning of the story is there's these missionaries. And I
want to say they're Jehovah's Witnesses or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They're at this carnival. They're at the carnival from the movie Us. That's exactly where they're at. The beginning of the movie Us, that's the setting. Or like Lost Boys or whatever.
Yeah.
Which actually is I learned this weird fact. In Us, they talk about, in that first scene, someone saying, oh, they're filming a movie over there. And apparently it is Lost Boys that's being filmed in the beginning of the movie Us.
Really?
That it's the same exact location and the time that they were filming the movie.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a weird Lost Boys reference at the beginning of the movie. Yeah, isn't it? But it's that kind of vibe. He goes up to this really like sketchy looking group of people. Like they look like, the 80s misfits. Equivalent of, they're like punk misfits.
Well, don't they look like the group that attacked Hollis Mason?
Yeah, they kind of do.
Yeah, I think they had like a similar haircut or something.
Who get their just desserts.
Yeah.
And this group does too, I guess.
Yeah.
He is lured into the House of Mirrors from the film Us by this lady who is trying to seduce him.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to hear more. And then they get in there and she starts undressing him. And this guy's real scrawny and like kind of sad
and
looking.
Very like religious in that sense.
He's all about...
He doesn't want to break anything.
Yeah.
He's a virgin. Doesn't want to do anything,
We have to wait till marriage kind of thing.
Yeah.
She manages to undress him completely by tempting him.
Yeah.
And then runs off with his clothes as a joke.
Yeah.
And while he's in the House of Mirrors, he hears something, this like giant event.
Yeah.
And the camera goes outside and everyone's like, not everyone's dead, but like most of them are dead.
Yeah, they're hit by the psychic wave from the alien.
Yeah, the camera just keeps panning. It pans like past Hoboken, New Jersey, goes over to New York.
Favorite scene because they did what Zack Snyder couldn't do.
They gave us the squid, man. They went full squid, man.
Yes, full. It looked like the image from the comic, and I got so excited when I saw that.
I don't know why they could have done it back then.
Zack Snyder said at the time,
CGI?
like some things just don't portray well in film, and it was really just the cost, probably.
Yeah, I could see that.
And he's just like, some people just wouldn't get it. And I'm like, you went this far into the movie.
Yeah, I mean, you went along with everything else. Why not? Yeah. What a weird thing to have an objection with. Well, anyway, we find out that this guy is Looking Glass,
which I love.
So cool. We also know that Looking Glass is super detached. He has no like strong relationships, which is funny that they picked Careless Whisper because he's never going to dance again. You know what I mean? This is like a heavy, this is the Looking Glass episode.
Yeah.
Where we find out he's in a therapy group with people dealing with squid fear. There's an interesting conversation in here that one of the ladies that he talks to this lady after the therapy meeting. And she says that, I wasn't even there, but what affected me is when I saw Steven Spielberg's movie, The Pale Horse.
Yeah.
And that it's a black and white movie and this little girl in red emerges out of the rubble of the squid attack or whatever. And it's like, that's Schindler's List. So in this universe, there's like no fear of the Holocaust. Steven Spielberg doesn't feel the need to make a movie about that atrocity. Instead, he's going to make a movie about this like American atrocity that happened in, what would have been if it was released the same time Schindler's List was, like 5 years later.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think about. But I thought that was just a weird little like pop culture reference.
That's super cool. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, it was just funny. When they were describing the movie, I was like, oh, that's Schindler's List. He is meeting with this chick and they really click. They go out to a bar. They're having a good time. Then they both need to leave. And when she's picked up by her friend, it is the truck with the lettuce.
Yeah.
And it drops a head of lettuce. So Looking Glass finds this. He chases them to this abandoned mall. And we think that he's going to surprise them. But it turns out it was a plant.
Yeah.
Literally, it was a plant. It was lettuce. But it was also a plant to get him there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
and a key thing about Looking Glass is that we find out that he has a day job. 2 day jobs, kind of. One is that he works for companies and he can tell if people are telling the truth when it comes down to like satisfaction and what they like.
Yeah.
And then when he's interrogating people for, police, he has that room that he lights up and he stares into their eyes and sees if they're telling the truth. So he could just
like a
tell.
human lie detector.
Yeah, he's like a human lie detector. And then he's also in charge of like watching over this alarm that lets us know if there's going to be another squid fall. So he's anticipating this event to happen again.
Yes.
And this girl picks him up and he even admits like, I can tell if people are lying to me and everything. And he gets subdued into this factory.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is that he was misled twice in his life. And that's with the girl as very beginning.
Both women. Yeah.
Yeah, both women. And that's why his marriage failed. That's why he's so relatable to Rorschach because of his age. He's real isolated, just like Rorschach was as well. But he's not a sociopath. He just has issues, He
has issues.
But he's traumatized. And I think that trauma is what makes him such a unique character in this story.
Rorschach's mask also reflects... the Rorschach is people see what they want to see. And in a lot of ways, Looking Glass wears this mirror reflective mask. And it's like people are going to see their interpretation of themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even their masks have a big thing. And his mask is out of fear of squid attacks. It's supposed to block that psychic energy.
All of his hats have foil
have
and
a foil lining and everything. Yeah. Let me see here. What else happens in this one? Well, they basically show him the truth.
Yeah.
He gets caught there. The senator is one of the people.
Yeah, Senator Keene.
He sets him down and says, hey, I was shown this the day I was put into office. Mm-hmm. And they pop this this video cassette tape in, and it is Veidt's plan in 1985, congratulating Robert Redford on winning his election like 10 years later. Mm-hmm. He's like, how did I predict this event with such accuracy?
Yeah.
It's like, I constructed the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And behind him, we see the giant squid monster.
Yeah.
And we learn, and for Looking Glass, this is like earth shattering.
Yeah.
Because he's built his whole life around this fear.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. That's pretty much the core story. The Veidt part of the story. He's got his catapult working, and in this one he shoots himself out.
Yeah.
And we find out that he's on a moon of Jupiter, and that's where he's been this whole time.
Yeah.
He's in some kind of force field that when he's
Europa.
inside of it, he can see, it looks like an English countryside.
Yeah.
But when he shoots through that thing, we find out, he's on Europa and he's in this homemade spacesuit. Mm-hmm. And we see him moving some things around. He's like moving bodies, and it says help, or it says help me, I think.
And then it has letter D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the scene ends because they pull him back.
Yeah.
He's also got this thing about this sheriff who's there to watch over him.
The game warden.
Yeah. And he's like, I told you not to be breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. And then Veidt's captured at the end of the episode. We also get Claire de Lune by Debussy, another classical piece of music.
There you go.
Impressionist, but the branch that we call classical music.
And I thought that was such a cool ending for Veidt, because it's more mystery of like, does it say like help me daddy? Does it say help me Dr. Manhattan? Like, what does it say?
What's
and you're left
with what?
Confused to what the last episode.
Mm-hmm. Angela's turned in by Wade at the end of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
She had found these pills in her car when the car landed, and they're nostalgia pills.
Nostalgia was a perfume in the comic.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good catch.
That was Veidt's thing. Yeah. And when she took over the company, Lady True, she turned them into pills. But they were discontinued pills because people were abusing it, because you would take it. It was like Total Recall. Yeah. They would take part of your memories, and you could just kind of live the best of moments of your life.
And it was causing people to go insane too, right?
Because they'd get trapped in those moments and they'd become addicted to it. And that's why they stopped manufacturing them completely. But she ends up taking an entire bottle of someone else's memories.
Because we find out the Looking Glass has turned her into to Blake.
Because his desk was bugged.
Silk Spectre. Yeah. And when she's about to get captured, she realizes they're going to take the pills away. They know that I've been hiding my grandfather. Mm-hmm. She just downs that bottle. And Heath Ledger style.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great. Oh, and then the episode ends with him being at home and the 7th Cavalry showing up in Rorschach mask and busting into his house. A looking glass is who we're talking about. And that's where the episode ends, which bugs me because we don't see what happens for like another 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And we're just left on this looking glass cliffhanger. Okay, episode 6 is crazy, dude. Episode 6 is the Dr. Manhattan trip of this show, where Dr. Manhattan's hopping through space and time, telling you everything is happening. This happens to Angela.
It's hard to rank which one was my favorite, but this was definitely in my top 3.
Yeah, this was really good.
It was filmed so well.
It's mostly in black and white. Mm-hmm. Angela is now locked up at the police precinct. She swallowed all these pills. Lori's very concerned because she thinks she's going to die after eating all that, and she needs her to sign this consent form
so they can pump her stomach.
She goes into this black and white flashback. She is her grandfather on this like racist police force.
Yeah.
So he became a cop. And
it's just the time.
It's just the time.
It's just the era. You know?
It was this weird time where black people on paper had equal rights to be employed, quote unquote.
Not treated
but that's
that way.
not how it really happened.
Yeah.
And, you know, it still exists today.
Yeah.
We can write things and say, oh, you can't do this or that, but it still exists in the workplace.
Well, and that's why I found...
Not to that degree, but...
That's why I found them using nostalgia to be so important. Because nostalgia to a white person is, you know, thinking back to that era is totally different than nostalgia for a black person thinking back to 1939.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think that was such a key element in just on how they had to present that.
That is a really good point, man. I didn't think about that. It means 2 totally different things for different characters.
It's, you know...
The good old days.
Yeah, the good old days, or still fighting for something at that point.
This episode is basically Granddad's backstory, where we learn that because he's frustrated with these cops, he turns in this white guy who's burning down a Jewish bakery. And the rest of the cops let him go because he is... he's white as well.
Yeah.
And they do that white power signal, which looks like the OK sign.
Yeah.
This is weird. I've heard this is like a sign for white power.
Yeah.
Just in this last year.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it before. So it really confuses me.
Well, it's even I haven't heard of it before, but like looking into it, it's, you know, it means the Cyclops for one. And that's a reference to the alien because the alien was a Cyclops.
Okay.
And it is a white power, I guess, symbol, and it's real hidden and everything too. I don't know. I mean, I'm totally wrong. Maybe
that is interesting.
And
to make a weird Tim Blake Nelson connection in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Of course, there's a bunch of racist people.
Yeah.
We have the Bible selling book salesman who's played by what's his name, man? The guy from Roseanne.
Oh,
if Frank was here, he'd be shouting it at me right now. He's shouting it right now, listening to this recording, do the audio. John Goodman.
There you go.
Yeah. Another regular of the Coen brothers, but John Goodman is who the Cyclops is in the Odyssey. I don't know if you remember this, but I know Brother, Where Art Thou is a retelling of the Odyssey.
Yeah.
He is the Cyclops. And he's super racist in that movie, which I wonder if this is even some kind of reference to that.
Maybe.
I just feel like this is brand new information to me, and I thought I knew more. But sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, Granddad, frustrated that he can't fight crime after he's gone through all this stuff, becomes Hooded Justice.
Whoa. Let's give some information here. He goes after the white dude that burned down the Jewish place, and he takes him in, and some other officers say, "No, we'll handle this."
Yeah, and they let him go.
They let him go, which it looks like they take him in at first, but then he finds him again on the street, and then he tries to stop him again. But these other white officers are so upset, they go and try to lynch him.
Oh, yeah, I'm skipping the most important part.
Yeah, and they beat the crap out of him, and they hang him. And
but they cut him down.
They cut him down.
They don't kill him.
Moments before he's like ready to just die. And he's laying there, and he has the rag that they covered his face with, and he has the noose that they cut to free him.
Yeah.
And he's walking back through, and it's a typical superhero trope where he's walking through and he hears a cry for help, and he goes through and he's full of rage and he's full of anger, and he puts on the hood. And this is the second part of his, origin story, essentially. Because the first part is when he was a child. And now the second part is where this event happens.
He becomes Hooded Justice.
And he becomes Hooded Justice. And the woman the baby he saved in episode 1 or 2
becomes his wife.
Becomes his wife, girlfriend, partner thing. And it turns out that, she says something to him. She says, "I'm scared for you because now you have a stick and a gun. And what are you going to do with it?" And he can't do anything with it. Yeah. So with the hood, and he's able to save these people. He doesn't care that they're white or whatever. He just wants to stop these people because of the injustice going on.
And she supports him at the beginning. She says that hood is how you get justice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And she also says, and it's funny because we see Hooded Justice on the TV show, and he's this blonde, blue-eyed, because we know he has blue eyes and he has white skin. And she tells him to put on the face paint because if he goes out there as a black man trying to save people, he's going to die.
In a hood, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it doesn't it's not that the noose didn't make sense in Watchmen, but it was always kind of what exactly is he trying to say with that?
Exactly. And, they kind of turned it into maybe it being that circus character, but I love how they chose Hooded Justice and I love the story they made for him. This was before Watchmen. You know what I mean? This was a before Watchmen story worth being told.
Yeah.
Not the crap we got. Oh man, where was I just going with that? I just got angry thinking about before Watchmen.
About the noose.
The noose and everything. They chose
detail.
the one character that was man, what an interesting story to tell.
Yeah. Someone with so much ambiguity in both ways.
Yeah. And it's I love how they had to use the white face paint, and he's a bigger dude. And it just all makes sense, It all makes sense.
We also have to assume that eventually he frames someone else as him. Because they find Hooded Justice's body all washed up.
They don't
and
say
they assume it's him.
They assume it's him. Yeah.
So even in Under the Hood now, there was enough room for them to wiggle this thing in. It's clear they really read this. They read the details out of Watchmen.
Yeah.
And were able to write something new that doesn't feel ridiculous. Then we also learned that Hooded Justice is gay.
Or bisexual at least.
Bisexual, yeah.
And Captain Metropolis comes along and he figures out 1, that he's Hooded Justice, and 2, that he's gay or bisexual in just a moment.
And they hook up because he's trying to get him to join the Minutemen.
Yeah. And this was actually revealed earlier in the show because it shows Hooded Justice banging Captain Metropolis before all this. Yeah.
They showed it in American Hero Story.
Yeah.
Yeah. They show it there, which we also get that scene in Watchmen, right? Is it? No,
I think this is a new thing.
We don't.
This is totally new.
It's confusing because the framing is what looks like the comedian scene when Hooded Justice walks in on
rapes Lori and everything.
Yeah,
or tries to rape Lori.
Yeah, or Sally.
I mean Sally. Yeah,
confusing. At the end, he finds out that this group, including that guy he tried to arrest originally, and all these racist cops, conveniently, they're all really good buddies.
Yeah.
It changes the beginning of being oh, you're a white guy, you're off the hook, to being oh, you're my crime partner. How did he catch you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It turns out that they've been using this projection screen, this projector,
to hypnotize
black people into killing each other. And he comes to this
and creating
scene
hate within them.
Yeah, he comes to this scene where he's in a theater house and all these people are murdered. And everyone's super confused.
She walks up to this woman who's crying and she's just I was watching the movie and I don't know what came over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. He shows up and he kills all those people. He finds them and he murders all of them. And he takes one of the projectors.
He finds them and he calls Captain Metropolis. And Captain Metropolis is even you know what, this isn't a good look for the Minutemen. You're going to have to solve your black problems by yourself.
And he had already told him previously
that he would help him.
He was using him, really.
Yeah.
Because he needed the original hooded superhero to be on the Minutemen.
Yeah, to give him credibility.
What a jerk.
Yeah. Dude, he was what's his name in The Boys?
Oh yeah, he's a Homelander.
Homelander. This guy, Captain Metropolis, 100% Homelander on this. Yeah. And it's funny because you see Captain Metropolis later on during
we also did The Boys. Sorry. That's the other TV show.
We didn't we? Yeah, that's right. We see him in the meeting for when they were creating the Watchmen later on in the Watchmen comic book too. So it's kind of funny seeing him age from the show to like the comic to yeah.
I agree with you though. This Hooded Justice storyline, this is probably one of my favorite episodes too, if not the best one. But man, I can't believe how much they nailed writing an original story. Imagine if the Star Wars prequels were that thorough and satisfying.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oof.
Yeah, I couldn't handle it. Hey man, we're getting close. We're in episode 7. This is Angela's backstory episode, really.
Which was wonderful.
Ooh, yes. You know what? It's not that the first episodes are slow, but they're so ambiguous that you can't really get a grip on what's going on. Well, so when you finally get to the last like 4 episodes, it feels like
I mean about
insane.
A great show.
Yeah.
You know, you're confused and you're being drawn on slowly, but it starts peeling back all the answers.
But it's intriguing.
Yeah. And figuring out the way they did the origin stories is just like Watchmen too.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly the same thing.
And it's not saturated. It's not too much or too little. It's just enough to give you like the right amount of trauma they endured.
And it's got such a great sense of realism like Watchmen does.
Yeah.
Like obviously there are a few out of world things, but they feel so tangible and like gritty. You can imagine all of these scenes really happening.
Oh yeah.
That's good stuff.
And her as a little girl grew up in Vietnam. And we always knew she was from Vietnam, but I was confused right away. I was like, she's Vietnamese or she's born in Vietnam? Like, well, or why?
I just knew that they said Vietnam's a state, and then I assumed she's a GI's kid.
I didn't even think of that when I was watching.
I mean, that, just like an El Paso reasoning, I guess.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally makes sense. Yeah. But she was with her parents, and she goes, I don't know if it's her birthday or what, but she goes to get a movie, and she comes back with a cover, and it's Sister Night.
Yeah.
And she mimicked this character.
It's a blaxploitation movie of this like cool street knight, you know, or street nun who's fighting crime. Yeah.
And I think they say something along the lines of like, well, why do you want to watch it? And she says, because she looks like me.
Yeah.
And not that I look like her or something, but I thought that was so important.
She looks like me, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so important because she saw herself in this character who was an authoritative Black female. And that's what gave her motivation from there on out.
You know what? That's why representation matters, Brandon. And that's why when you hate on Black Mary Jane, that's why people hate on you. Because you're trying to shut down representation. No, I'm just joking.
Did I ever say that?
Before
Far From Home,
Far From Home came out, you had made a comment on it, and I
hated it.
And I was like, "Wow, are you racist? What's going on, Brandon?
That's right.
What's going on?"
Well, because her character was dull in the first movie.
Her character was dull in the first movie. Though. Real talk. Far From Home, she's hilarious.
Amazing.
Yeah,
won me over 100%. Yeah.
Such a turnaround.
But so there's and it's crazy because it's reflective 100% to where we are in Iraq and Iran and all that type of stuff. That there's a bomber that goes and he suits himself up. He gets a package right in front of the little girl, and then they go over and her parents are killed right in front of her.
And to put this, there's one little detail about the scene we're missing. It's that it's like Dr. Manhattan Day. They're like celebrating Dr. Manhattan's victory over Vietnam.
Oh wow!
And even the guy, one of the
doing a puppet
Vietnamese
show,
guys, is doing a puppet show, and it's like the scene from, well, it's in the show too, of Dr. Manhattan just pointing at things and blowing them up in Vietnam. And it's like, why are these people celebrating this? They're still Vietnamese.
Yeah,
and it is exactly what you're saying. Like, and even more topically, like Iran right now, you can't just go into a completely foreign culture and make them be part of whatever you are.
Yeah.
The world just doesn't work that way. The United States is barely held together with our cultural differences.
Yeah.
And we're all one landmass.
Yeah.
So, good, timely political storytelling, man.
Oh, hands down.
So cool. And we're in the 80s where there was all this, conversation about deception. And we have like the character of Richard Nixon. Can we trust our government? What are they hiding from us? Watchmen was telling that story too.
Yeah.
Like the comic. So it's cool that they were able to keep something so relevant, but not just relevant, just like poignant. Like, there's really a point to be made here. So we're not just, whatever. Friendship is the answer. Some stupid lesson. Yeah.
But so she becomes an orphan and she's in a foster home. and
which is like a double sweatshop.
Yeah, Jesus Christ, yeah. But the one that picks her up, because she had no immediate family on record, but it's the girl that Hooded Justice was with. I guess she did research or she heard
Her
about
grandma.
stuff. Yeah, her grandma.
She was trying to contact her son. No. Yes, her son.
Yeah.
Because a little bit of the story, like Hooded Justice becomes obsessed with being Hooded Justice. So his lady leaves him with now their little kid.
And he was also very ashamed because his little kid wanted to become like Hooded Justice, and he said no.
He got angry at him for putting on, just like playing with the hood and the makeup.
Yeah.
So they leave and they exit his life. And that's why Granddad's all by himself.
Yeah.
But then when that boy grows up, he says, I want to be a soldier. And the mom says, if you're going to go off and do this, feel free to never talk to me again. And then he does it anyway.
Yeah.
So she actually ends up trying to contact him. She's trying to reconnect with the son when she finds out that the army base, oh, your son and his wife are dead. Yeah. And you know what? There's a little girl, your granddaughter, who's in this Vietnamese orphanage sweatshop. Yeah. So she flies from Tulsa to go pick her up.
And they have lunch and they talk and
nice
she tries to explain things and it's so sweet and you feel so much hope.
Yeah.
And you see this little girl. She's actually the same girl that plays the girl in Shazam too.
No, I thought you were gonna say the little girl in Us, and I would have lost it.
Oh my gosh, that was insane. Maybe, I don't know. But then the grandma, she's ready to take her back to the States and she's walking around the cab to put her in and she has a heart attack.
It just dies right
she
there.
Just dies on the spot.
Boom.
And it's so heartbreaking, the emotional trauma they put all these characters through. But it feels so right to shape them who they are.
Dang. Okay, and then we get the reveal at the end of this episode of episode 7 that Angela's husband, this like super nice, like amazing husband, this whole episode or whole season, we haven't really talked about him much. And to be honest, he doesn't play much of a role up to this point.
He's just the husband,
the supporting husband,
and he's a great character.
Yeah,
he's nice.
He's nice. He seems very intelligent. He's always reading huge books.
Yeah,
he's totally unsuspecting, and we find out he's Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
And at this point in the show, I was like, what?
Me too.
Yeah.
And on to episode 8, a god walks into a bar. And I was, at this point at the show, I was amazed. And I got to this part and I crossed my arms. And I uncrossed them very quickly too. As fast as I crossed them, I was like, it makes sense.
Because Angela is now an adult. She looks around the age that she does just in the show.
Yeah,
like they didn't really de-age her, even though this is before, assumedly 8 years before, something like that.
Yeah.
She's in a bar. Everyone's dressed up like Dr. Manhattan because it's Dr. Manhattan Day, which is also now the anniversary of her parents' death.
Yeah.
She's drinking heavily at a bar when Dr. Manhattan walks in wearing a Dr. Manhattan mask.
To disguise himself.
And starts talking to her and doesn't lie at all. Just says, hey, I'm Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
And talks to her like you would expect Dr. Manhattan to do it. Yeah.
And that conversation is so important. Because, at first I was like, why her? Why did he fall in love with her?
Yeah.
What was the whole importance and how did he even trace back to this character? I thought it made no sense. But then again, think back to how he met Lori and how he met Jane, or was her name Jane? Janie, yeah. It's just that's his timeline and that's his story.
Yeah.
And that's just it. And it's very well to be accepted because I know there was a lot of, at first, backlash of like, well, why would Dr. Manhattan fall in love with this girl? And it's like, well, that's just the path he was on.
Yeah. That is now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I can deal with. I wasn't upset by it.
No. Yeah.
It seemed like, okay, well, what next?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I mean, incredibly long story short. Like throughout him telling her, oh, you're going to fall in love with me. Oh, we're going to get married. We're going to have kids and blah, 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 blah. And we have, how much does he say? We have 8 years.
Like 10 years and then it's going to end in tragedy.
It's going to end in tragedy.
And she's like, why would I do it if it's going to end in tragedy? And he's like, well, every relationship, no matter what, ends in tragedy. And I was like,
Dang.
There's a lot of one-liners in this show. You could pull at least 10 from every episode and just
Just good quippy dialogue. Yeah, I can
Great
see
quotes,
that.
Yeah.
A lot of t-shirts being made.
Yeah.
But they need to figure out how to live together.
Mm-hmm.
She eventually gets convinced. Spoiler. They find dead bodies of people recently deceased,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to take over one of these bodies
Yeah.
and make himself look like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he also needs to hide his powers.
Yeah.
And he goes to Ozymandias because he knows that he knows the most about how to defeat Dr. Manhattan and his powers.
Yeah.
And Ozymandias makes it looks like the hydrogen atom, the thing that's on his head, but it's made out of metal, and tells him, we're going to put this inside of you. We're going to stick it in your head, push it in. You're going to forget everything. But because you don't remember, you won't know how to use your powers.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Manhattan, if he didn't know how to use his powers, would be a regular man or something like that.
Well, essentially, because if you're not bouncing around time all that, you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
So it brings him in the present moment and locks him in. Yeah.
It tethers him.
Mm-hmm.
That's that word from the last episode.
Oh, yeah.
That you were just struggling with.
No, it was, I can't even remember. It wasn't tether,
Anchor?
though.
No.
Anchor. I want to say it was anchor.
It was something like that.
Something ridiculous.
It was like a really simple word. Book? No, I was joking. But yeah, man, that's more or less the whole episode. I mean, it's told so much better than just...
We're just recapping.
We're just recapping.
We still have a conversation to have after this.
Obviously.
Yeah.
The 7th Cavalry is attacking John, and they know that the attack is coming.
Yeah.
And this scene it gets really confusing for me. Because so at the end, we now know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that she has to bring him out of her husband's body and make him Dr. Manhattan again. Because 7th Cavalry is coming and they're trying to capture him.
Yeah.
They end up fighting off a bunch of these guys. Yeah. And then John literally has the opportunity to where there's no reason why he couldn't not defend himself. Mm-hmm. But doesn't do it because he says that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Which in this circumstance, it doesn't seem like it needs to happen. Like other things in Watchmen where Dr. Manhattan makes that kind of line or whatever, it's like, oh, this seems inevitable. You know what I mean? But in this particular instance of him saying this, it's like, no, you could have just turned around and blew that guy up.
But no, because John is the most passive character in Watchmen.
Not in Doomsday Clock, he isn't.
Because Doomsday Clock is trash. That's why. When you look at John, he will not change anything that isn't supposed to happen. John is real. He's an intelligent man, but he has no creativity. And we'll talk about that more right now too. But he is passive. He won't because he already sees the future. And because the future is already there, he won't do anything about it. It doesn't matter if he has the opportunity to. He has millions of opportunities. Why didn't he just turn off all the nukes? Why didn't he just get rid of them all in Watchmen?
And he could have. See, this is the part I kind of struggle with. Like, it exists because it exists, but John does have the ability to change it.
But it exists.
And he's passive, but then he also agrees to fight the Vietnam War and kill all these people. Because that's just how it goes. Like, I get the reasoning behind it, but it's almost just like too convenient of a storytelling device.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, how did that? Oh, it was the Force.
Yeah, it's one of those.
It's one of those things where it's like, well, John sees the future.
Because then what?
At all times.
At that point, you can't tell a story, though.
I guess it's true. And you got to make that sacrifice for this. So I'm not going to be super upset.
But I agreed with you because the next episode, could we just roll to the next? Are you going to talk about Adrian?
Man, I didn't take any notes on what's going on with Well, we don't really know what's going on with Adrian until the last episode. Yeah. Like we find that body thing and then it's kind of dropped for a while, isn't it? Well, they have a trial. Yeah. Where he's
announced guilty.
He's announced guilty.
By his peers, which are a bunch of pigs.
Yes. Yeah. And there's also a bunch of the clones there who are like, well, he's been recklessly killing us for years. You know what I mean? So they're not crazy about him either.
It even tells the story of John when he was a boy with his father escaping Germany.
And we did skip over that too.
And that's where he came across these people
and the castle that
and
they
the
inhabit.
castle. And he caught them having sex. And instead of being jerks about it, like some, pompous English people would be back then, they explained to him that it's like a very magical and beautiful thing that he saw.
That's right.
And they're very sweet and they're very kind to him. And I thought that was, at first I was like, well, he escaped at the end of Watchmen. He escapes to go find a better universe.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes and tries to create his own. And he ends up creating the life on Europa. Yeah. And he bases them off of these two people because, again, John is not imaginative. He's not creative at all. And he just takes what he knows and uses it. And that's how we get the explanation of this castle, these people, and why they were specifically chosen for this existence.
And when John goes to Ozymandias to get that ring from him, mm-hmm. he sees that he's unhappy with how the world's going and that they didn't learn the lesson. He's like, why would you like to go to paradise? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, and that's how Ozymandias ends up there.
He says, I have a place where these people can worship you mm-hmm. like that. And he's like, how does that sound? He's like, it sounds like paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess, he didn't know what he was getting himself into.
No.
Ozymandias isn't ready for that kind of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then in this next episode, the ship is coming down.
Yeah.
Whatever message
in the last episode, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we also learn the truth about Lady True was that behind in Ozymandias' office, behind the portrait of Alexander, there's a secret compartment filled with his sperm.
Yeah.
And one of the workers takes it and she literally says, F you, Ozymandias, and she injects it into herself and has his child, which turns up Lady True. Mm-hmm. And then True admits to being his daughter and she confronts Ozymandias and she ends up taking over the company that way too, I think.
And he tells her, I have no daughter.
Yeah.
That's
impossible.
Your intelligence is stolen.
Yeah. It doesn't consider a daughter and he will never call her daughter.
Yeah. And then there's a whole thing too about Lady True cloning her mom and it's now what we assumed was her daughter this whole time.
Yes, and it's that little girl.
Crazy thing. Yeah. Basically the equivalent of Babastis, but it's a little Asian
mm-hmm.
girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially.
So this is when we get into, this is it, man. This is the last episode. You're already describing a whole bunch of it.
I can't even think. What did he tell the game warden when the game warden was dying?
So he ends up,
he has his uniform back on too.
He's going to be killed.
Yeah.
No, he sees the ship landing. He sees a spaceship landing from his save me mm-hmm. Sign. He breaks out. And as he's escaping, the game warden shows up with a gun and is like, I'm going to have to shoot you. You're escaping. You're breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. And he shoots him and Ozymandias straight up catches the bullet just like in Watchmen. And he ends up killing the game warden. And as he's bleeding out, he removes the mask that the game warden's been wearing. Yeah. And he's just another one of these clones. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what did you make me for, master? And he's like, well, I was here for 8 years. I needed something to do. I needed a worthy adversary. And he's like, was I worthy adversary? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And he just leaves his body.
But
gets in the spaceship and takes off.
Why is the mask?
I don't remember. Maybe there was something about the mask.
Something, and I had a whole point about that, and it's going to drive me crazy. Hopefully I'll remember it.
We fear what's in the mask or something like that. I don't know. Or no, a man in a mask will become unjust or something like that. Basically that when a man wears a mask, he can act any way he wants. And that's what he needed the game warden to wear the mask so mm-hmm. that he could be against Ozymandias. All these other servants are docile.
Yeah.
And follow exactly what he says. And he didn't want that. He wanted someone who would be willing to fight him.
Yeah.
So he needed someone in a mask to do it. I don't remember exactly what the dialogue was, but that was more or less what was going on.
Counterintuitive thing about that guy and his statement versus what Hooded Justice felt about a mask. I don't remember.
Well, maybe that in that case, that guy's mask makes cruelty, where in Hooded Justice's case, the mask allows him to.
Oh, because masks make men cruel.
Yeah, because masks make men cruel. That's what he says.
Yeah. and I don't even remember. It'll come back to me. But still, what a beautiful thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because masks make men cruel. And that's how he views men in masks, which is why Ozymandias stopped wearing one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't wear his mask. He wears his armor, his silly suit. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah, he looks super ridiculous.
Then Lady True ships him back to Earth on that thing. We find out.
And he steps into this, like, I was looking up a bunch of action figures on eBay, and there was this San Diego exclusive where he is packaged almost just like that in a white box, hands on his hips. And that's how Ozymandias is posed. He looks like he's stepping into like an action figure packaging in that ship.
Yeah, he does. That's funny. I didn't think about that. There's also kind of a fake out too. When he gets in the ship, he's frozen. Like in this golden statue.
And it's this, you realize
it's a statue from earlier in the show, and you're like, did they just kill Ozymandias?
Yeah. She has been holding her father as the statue. And it's funny because in the earlier scene when we see him in episode 3 or 4, whatever, they ask, why did you make him so old?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, that's
old
just
people
the way
are revered in our culture. She says something like that.
No, she's like, because that's the way he looks.
No, she said something about in Asian culture that we revere our old people.
Really? I thought it was something like because that's how Ozymandias looks, and nobody knows he's aged because they thought he was dead.
Yeah.
So he's aged, and they're like, why would you make him look so old?
That's hilarious. Well, when the spaceship takes off, we also see that on Europa, it's "Save Me, Daughter," so that he's called out for her help. He has humbled himself.
Yeah.
And he built the "Save Me, Daughter" sign out of the corpses of hundreds of these clones.
Yeah.
So this guy's been launching these clones up
for years.
He knew when that satellite was going to come by.
Mm-hmm.
He was waiting for that time and knew that he had to have his plan in order and have all the bodies laid out so that she would see it at exactly that time. So the world's smartest man finds a way to escape the moon of Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty intense.
The last episode.
There's so much, man.
Dude, yeah, I didn't realize how dense this was.
So we discussed that John got captured.
Yeah.
We now go back to the mall.
Particle accelerator thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go back to the mall.
The same thing that created him.
Yeah, the same thing created him, and the same thing that Veidt tries to kill him with.
Yeah.
We go back to that mall where the 7th Cavalry are hanging out. The senator wants to take over Dr. Manhattan.
His powers.
Yeah. And our setup for the scene is we have John in this cage.
Yeah.
And
that cage, all the lithium, we didn't mention this, but at the beginning of the show,
there's a whole thing about lithium batteries.
They're stealing lithium batteries from watches, and they've used them all to power this cage, which messes up John so hard he doesn't know what time period he's in.
Yeah.
So he's bouncing across time.
He can't just get himself out of the situation.
Yeah.
Which
he can't be present.
Why even need to do that if that's just the way things are going to happen? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Why not just say Dr. Manhattan's just going to sit there? I was joking. But anyway, we have Lori Jupiter there tied up in the chair. She's captured.
Because the wife of what's-his-face... And I thought that was cool, that reveal.
She had like a trap door.
Yeah, and she was like, why isn't it working? And then bam, and you're just like, whoa. And you could tell this girl is evil.
Oh, she's super evil.
What I mean? Yeah.
And there's a whole group of like evil old white people there who are excited that the 7th Cavalry is going to have their own Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
And then we also have Looking Glass, who's broken in and he's in disguise as one of the Rorschach mask guys.
Or I don't know if he's in disguise or maybe he's accepted into their group.
No, in that case, he is in disguise.
Oh, okay.
He talks about it a little bit.
When Senator Keene strips himself down, he's wearing the underwear that Dr. Manhattan wears.
He's wearing the underwear. And what's funny is because he takes his shirt off first and you see the underwear poking out of his pants. And I was like, what is he wearing? And then he took his pants off and I was like, oh my God.
Yep. The action figure you gave me, that's how I knew it right off of the top of my head. Because this is my Christmas ornament for the last month.
Yeah, he's going for it, man. Senator Keene gets in this capsule designed by Lady True. Mm-hmm. And who is warning him?
No, I don't think it's designed by Lady True.
It is. Like Angela shows up and says, don't get in there. Lady True's trying to take over Dr. Manhattan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And all this stuff that you have is from Lady True.
Yeah.
He's like, whatever, I'm going to be a god. It walks in the machine, turns the machine on.
Well, Lady True gets there and then she's just like, oh, you didn't even do this, or this. this isn't gonna work, and he's just like, whatever, and then he gets in there.
Yeah, that's right. And then, well, he's basically just like a blood bag. Like when they open that thing up, it's just like guts.
Yeah, everywhere.
Gushing out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Lady True teleports them all to that town square that we saw where Lori is making those phone calls from. In that Dr. Manhattan phone booth thing.
Yes, yeah.
We're back there, and basically Lady True is revealing that the Millennium Clock is for her to absorb Dr. Manhattan's powers, put it into her. She'll be like the smartest woman in the world.
And the most
powerful. All those white people, racist people get incinerated.
Yeah.
Vite.
We could only wish.
Yeah. Vite figures out how to defeat his own daughter, though. And that's by turning up the coolant or whatever, the temperature.
Ah, yeah.
He's basically controlling the weather because he's been making these squids fall the whole time.
By the algorithm.
So he makes him freeze. And when he drops the squids, they're so fast that they're going to kill people.
Yeah.
And now John is getting absorbed by this machine. Mm-hmm. They let that thing go. The squids like tear through everything. And that's pretty much the end of her story.
Yeah.
Lady True is defeated.
Yeah.
We're left with this ending where Angela, now husbandless, because her husband was Dr. Manhattan, she goes home and Dr. Manhattan had made this comment when they first met about how if he had sent his essence or whatever into like an egg, into an organic product, and someone were to eat it, that they might be able to gain his powers. Mm-hmm. So they go home and there's like an egg carton on the floor.
Yeah.
And some of the eggs are broken.
When she realized what was going on, she was taking eggs out, and he even says, watch out for the egg.
Yeah.
And she drops them all.
Yeah.
And they're all over the floor. So at the end of this episode, she's walking over to pick them all up, and she's cleaning the mess, and she sees one egg still intact.
Yeah. And she eats that thing. We go out to the swimming pool in her backyard, where she's going to see if she can walk on water like Dr. Manhattan, and her foot kind of comes over the water, and in a true Inception style ending, bam, it cuts before we know
what the fate is. Wow.
Ooh.
So there's so many details we still missed, and you got to watch the show, and I bet we could do an annotated. Dude, we will. I don't even care.
We'll do an commentary or something?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
And then follow up with it, because it's so much information, and it's done so well.
Yeah.
You
it's really good. I think it's going to be one of those shows that people are going to be able to go back to and dig through it and find more and more every time.
And I would love to rewatch it, knowing what I know and seeing what I could catch early on.
Yeah, it's going to change the entire perception of the show the second time through. Because it's just like when you read Watchmen again for the second time.
Dude, last time I reread it, there was moments I didn't remember.
It always happens.
Yeah. There's always a key scene or some important detail. And there's so many homages to the comic. Like, you even see in one episode, one of my favorite parts was seeing the silhouette of the two people kissing in an alleyway. Like, so many cool stuff. We didn't even dig deep into every character.
The only thing that really gripes me, one was the Rorschach thing. I thought that was such an oversight for a show that seems so careful. We already touched upon that.
Okay, cool.
The whole journal and all that. The ending is the only part that feels like, man, this is exactly Watchmen. Like Lady True is just little Vite.
Oh,
she's tricked a bunch of people into doing her bidding.
It's in her blood.
And then she's defeated at the last moment by the heroes.
In her blood.
Well, actually, in Watchmen, he gets away with it, really.
Yeah.
He doesn't get defeated.
Yeah.
But it just felt like such a, I don't know, MCU film ending.
Yeah.
Like, here's the big bad guy. Here's my machine. I'm monologuing and telling you how powerful I'm going to become. Yeah. And then, you're done.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well,
she was beaten by her father, the smartest
man.
Yeah.
And the real lesson of the story is that men are better than women. That's what Watchmen HBO is trying to say.
David said it. You could quote him on that. We'll throw it up on the.
That's Damon Lindelof's writing. I just want to be clear here. But seriously, that's the only thing that feels cheap to me.
And I could understand that completely. And I bet if I thought more about it, I could try to find an explanation. But
I mean, maybe there's something deeper. I would love to. I'm sure watching it again, I'm going to feel a little bit different about it. Mm-hmm. But overall, it's a really good show. That
great.
If you like Watchmen, I don't see you not enjoying it. It would be incredible for you to be like, oh, I love reading the comic book, but that show's really dumb. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what, like my girlfriend, she's only read the comic. She's seen the movie. Okay. She doesn't, and we have like an encyclopedia amount of knowledge about Watchmen, you and I.
Well, at this point, yeah.
Yeah. But she was able to enjoy it just as much as like she's read the comic once. She's seen the movie once. She understands who the characters are. You don't need to know every detail about it to just have a blast and be like, this is a great piece of television.
I
should there be a season 2?
70% agree with you. It's just that if the last time you watched the Watchmen movie was 2012 and that's all you ever did, you're going to be confused a little bit.
A little bit for sure. I mean, you're not.
And there's a lot of things I was explaining to Michelle. Like, oh, remember this was that thing that happened?
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the even worse, like, okay, remember in the movie when they did this whole thing? Well, in the comic book, it turns out it was this, and this is what we're seeing late. Like, if you didn't read that comic book, I would say don't watch the show.
Yeah.
Don't even start it without reading the comic book because you're not going to enjoy it as much.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not going to mean as much.
You'll just enjoy it.
Yeah.
But
you'll be like, oh, that was good.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah. I could see why people like it. But, dude, Watchmen is like the holy grail. Like it's the Old Testament. You know what I mean? Like it is everything in the comic book universe. For them,
well, I think the Holy Grail would be the New Testament because it's the cup of Christ.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry.
Is this like the Holy Grail now?
I guess so.
Because Doomsday Clock isn't.
Yeah. Watchmen is the Ark of the Covenant.
There you go again. With Doomsday Clock, he passed down his power.
Yeah.
And just like this one, he passed down his power. I thought that was a crazy little, oh wow, both of them thought of that.
Although I got to say, and you're probably not going to agree with me with this, I think Doomsday Clock did a better job of giving Dr. Manhattan an arc. Where Dr. Manhattan feels like a different character.
Yeah.
In this show, he's just Dr. Manhattan. Nothing's really changed.
And I 100% agree with you. And I think that was one of my biggest, my gripe when I was watching it was I wasn't convinced about Manhattan. I wasn't convinced about his presence, his actions in this one weren't. And like I said, he's a passive character, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't like fulfilled that was Dr. Manhattan. You know?
I can see that.
And just, not that the guy was a bad actor or anything, but
no, good performance.
Great performance. And what I found out was that they didn't tell him he was Dr. Manhattan until like episode 5.
Whoa.
So they wanted to have him be an organic, totally different person in the beginning of the story. And that's why he pulls it off so well.
What a crazy thing to try and cast. Like getting someone to read lines for a husband part, knowing that you're going to have to get him to be a Dr. Manhattan. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Back to your question you asked me though. Should there be a season 2? I say nay.
Me either.
I just think
it was just like Watchmen. It should be one story. And that was the biggest gripe about Doomsday Clock. It had too many branches on the tree when we just needed, I can't think of you know what I mean?
And you know what? If Doomsday Clock had scrapped all of the DC stuff or kept some of the DC stuff but
toned it down
and focused on the Watchmen part,
it could have been great.
It could have been really, really good, but
because we wanted a sequel to Watchmen as it was presented. This one, we were not told it was a sequel. We were told it was a remixed future, which gave us kind of more of an open mind going into it than being like, oh man, this is the
expectation
next
is so high.
Yeah.
And then you watch the first episode, you're like, Oklahoma, what? What? Yeah, I see what you mean. Maybe that was part of the marketing to get people to go in just with like,
open,
no expectation, just like, okay, let's see what's going to happen here.
And I was terrified when I started the show, dude, because I mean, clearly you were Watchmen fans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Clearly. But it's like, I was just mind blown by how well they pulled it off. And I'm so excited to watch it again.
I remember really watching the trailer and being like, this is
Lost.
visually interesting,
Yeah.
but what is going on?
Well, dude, at Comic-Con, I mean, I got one of the Comic-Con bags that was the Watchmen one, and
Yeah.
I was like, this makes no sense to me. It's like a squid.
Huh.
Like, and then like there was exhibits at Comic-Con, little outside things that you could do, and it had the booth. It had a couple other things, and there was nothing known about the show yet. So they had all these exhibits.
What a weird choice.
Yeah, and they had like these cool pins and everything, and it's like I wasn't attracted to it because I was like, I don't see the connection.
Yeah.
And now that I know about it, I'm glad I didn't see a connection, or I'm glad there was no deep connection.
Yeah.
You know, like it was its own unique story. And dude, we could have a whole episode about how much racial injustice has gone on to make this such a powerful story itself.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like that was like the key thing about we as a society, as a country, have mistreated people for so long and have done nothing about it, and it still continues to this day. And it's just like, it's such a great thing to like put in front of your face, and it makes you see it. Like, dude, I'm a white person, and I felt like crap watching that first scene. You know what I mean? Like, and I was just like, dude, I'm so sorry.
Dang.
Like, you know,
they got you with the white shame. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like, it's terrible how bad we've been to people.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Not even tried to do anything.
And you know what? This Tulsa, Oklahoma thing is not something that I feel is even really covered in schools.
It's not, and that's why he chose
Yeah.
it. This is something that he didn't know about until he started hearing about stuff,
Yeah.
and then he read a book about it. And that's when he was like, this needs to be told. This is
That's cool.
unlike Rogue One, this was a story that needed to be told.
Yes. I'm always down a dog on Rogue One. And 100% agree with you, man. It's so
I wish I knew about it. I felt wrong that
Yeah.
we didn't know about this event in our
Yeah.
history.
so invigorating to get
And Tulsa's
something so
not far
significant.
from us.
a real dude. It's not. Yeah.
It's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did we not even remotely hear about this
Mhm.
horrific event?
No.
Like, it's heartbreaking, you know? But, I mean, we'll see. We're probably going to have more Watchmen episodes. I'm not even
It's
going to lie.
inevitable.
Yeah.
We got to do Watchmensch whenever we get around to reading that.
I really want to read that too.
It sounds so silly. Well, let's do the world's quickest pull list because we've been going on for 3 hours, Brandon. No, I'm just joking.
I was just like, whoa.
Whoa, what?
Oh, man.
We've been going on longer than Star Wars Rise of Skywalker.
I think all of our Watchmen episodes are our longest episodes.
Well,
for
I mean,
sure.
they're just exciting for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a new year, and I'm trying to really complete stuff.
Okay.
First off, I've been playing the hell out of Brutal Legend.
Cool.
And that's just a fun game. And
Cool.
I'm 90% done. I never be as a kid. I downloaded the app Goodreads. I haven't used it since 2016. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to use it. I'm going to be consistent with my reading this year.
Oh.
So far, I'm on my third book of the year.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's January 7th, and I'm on my third book.
Like you
about halfway
finished 2 books
finished
already?
2 books already. And they're not like super long epic novels or anything, but like I still finished 2 stories, like 2 per day. You know what I mean?
I'm jealous, man. I need to read
Um,
more. Okay.
I read The Stranger, and let me see if I can pull up my stuff real fast. It's a novel, and it's from 1943. It's by Albert Cadmus, and it's basically about like an ordinary man that is faced with like absurd circumstances, and he reminds me so much of Dr. Manhattan because of how passive he is
Huh.
the entire time.
Okay.
He murders somebody, and he goes through the whole court things, and he faces death, and he's so passive and walks through life just like Dr. Manhattan would. And I wonder if that was an influence on all this, because if you read it, it's like 123 pages. It's not super long.
Okay.
Real easy read. But it was a phenomenal book, and now that I'm talking about it, I just made the connection to Watchmen.
Oh, that's
Everything's
funny.
connected to Watchmen.
It all
I also
is.
read AD After Death by Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire. And it's about a thief who is trying to understand life and the circumstances of death. And it's just this weird dystopian. It's a comic that it's made of prose, essentially.
Okay.
There's like maybe it's in 3 parts, and maybe there's like 20 pages worth that are actual comic book format, but the rest is prose. And it's a wonderful story. I think they're going to make an adaptation of it soon. But it was a cool read. And since I've been playing Brutal Legend, I've been on like a rock and roll Motorhead kick. So I'm reading Lemmy's autobiography, White Line Fever, and it is absurd and phenomenal and entertaining. And I have not been able to put it down because it's just so full of awesome stories and rock and roll and all that stuff. I'm also reading Grayson by Tim Seeley and Tom King. And it's basically at the end of during the New 52 era, Dick Grayson supposedly dies. And you know in the comic he doesn't, but they fake his death and continue it for the whole world to believe. Only Bruce knows that he's still alive. And Dick Grayson becomes a secret agent for Spiral. And it's Dick Grayson as a secret agent.
What? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm on like issue 3 right now. It's pretty cool. But that's where I'm at.
Okay. What do I got? You know what? Just to continue.
Oh, my bad. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
I finished book 1 of Jerusalem, Alan Moore's epic 100,000 word, whatever novel. And there's 3 books in it, but I just finished book 1.
Wow.
And it is dense and insane. And it's all about his hometown, Northampton. And I think I brought it up months ago, but I never got to it.
I remember you talking about it.
Yeah. And I'm trying to finish that one this year because it's one of the world's longest books.
Before or after Dune?
Oh, probably
no,
after.
I'm just joking.
This one's long, but not that long.
Wow. That sounds intense, man.
Yeah. Some good reading.
For myself, let's see here. I've been playing... Man, I've been hopping all over the place console-wise. I played a great NES game the other day, Gogol 13. It's based on some like Japanese secret agent property. I have no familiarity with it at all. I just bought a couple NES games off Craigslist for like a great price. And the game was really good. Like it's so cool to find a game from like 30 years ago that's awesome that you've never heard of. Continuing my Inuyasha trend, you know what I mean? I finished the show. I finished all that stuff. I started playing the games, and Inuyasha Feudal Combat on PS2 is terrible. It's really bad. It's so bland. It's a terrible fighting game. Play the PS1 fighting game if you really gotta get your anime fix, specifically Inuyasha. I've also been trudging my way through Death Stranding, which is exciting. There's a lot of people saying it's like a package delivery game. That is a large amount of it. I got to say 100%. I would recommend it, but you need to know that I am someone who's played every Metal Gear Solid game. I've beaten all of them. And I'm 100% on board with Hideo Kojima making a nonsense story that's completely absurd, totally over the top, like almost doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? Like some of it does, and some of it you're like, well, I think this is what's going on. That's what Death Stranding feels like. He's hitting a very big political message, maybe a little too on the nose. It's like a little like, oh, okay. But man, the gameplay's beautiful. Like the game looks great. If you are okay with playing a video game that isn't like, I need to be blowing things up. You know what I mean? Like there are people who can play Animal Crossing and there are people who can't. There are people who got into No Man's Sky and there are people who just hate it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a passive experience, it is cool. There's also some intense sections where you're getting chased by these like, you know, without getting way into it, like these dead bodies that are like reanimated corpses, part of this like sludge hive being. It's so insane. But there are parts where, you know, you're just walking with your packages, balancing this giant like tower you're carrying on your back. And then these things show up and you have to start running. And you're like on this like hilly mountain terrain. And that's really where the challenge comes in. Like, how do I navigate quickly under pressure while keeping in mind that I have to protect all the stuff I'm with? You're juggling like 6 simple tasks at once. And if you're only doing 1 or 2, it wouldn't be a big deal. But those few occasions where they send you all these different things that you have to be keeping an eye on, yikes. It's got a little bit of like a resource simulator feel to it. What else? I've been playing Star Wars Battlefront 2. I know you've been playing that as well.
Me too, dude.
Been super surprised.
Super fun.
Yeah.
So great.
Last, I do have some comic books. The first 2 I haven't read yet. For some reason, the DC Black Label just like really intrigued me.
Oh yeah, there's some. I mean, besides Batman Damned was all right, but
I didn't read Batman Damned. I skipped.
I want to do an
the
episode on
Superman one.
Don't read year one, dude. I read the first issue of Superman year one, and I was like, "This is trash. I'm not going to finish the rest."
I
Sorry,
picked
Frank.
up for some reason a Wonder Woman
I
comic
was
book,
intrigued
Dead
by
Earth.
that.
I thought it was so interesting looking, and it looks like this like post-apocalyptic Wonder Woman story.
Mm-hmm.
It looks insane. I haven't got a chance to read it yet, but I'll let you know for sure. I'm excited to see what it looks like, and also just like on a whim, I picked up this book called Philadelphia by Rodney Barnes.
I almost did a review on that, and
Really?
I know the artist is the current artist on Spawn, and it looks awesome. I heard it's real controversial. I heard it's like some really cool stuff going on in there.
Yeah, the art style's got almost like a photorealism to it in a weird way. But then when I was looking, just flopping through the comic book store, the back of this book has two, what do you call them? Blurps?
Mm-hmm.
People talk about your book. The first one is, it's the best graphic novel I've ever read. 5 times more graphic and 8 times more novel. And that's Chris Rock who said it. And I was like, okay, that's
All
weird.
right, that's weird, yeah.
And then the next one is, Philadelphia is the stunning and fresh horror fable I've been craving. This one feels like a classic. And that's Jordan Peele, the director of Us, for one more reference today.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, okay, just on those two totally different, totally bizarre things, I'll pick this up. And the art style looks nice. So.
Oh yeah, the artist on that one, was it Jason Sean Alexander, I want to say?
I think so, yeah, because I made a joke about it being Costanza, because that's Jason Alexander.
Yeah.
But not the same person.
The artist on the other book, Daniel Warren, I want to say, on Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Let me see. Daniel Warren Johnson?
Yeah. He does a series called
Story and Art. Sorry.
Oh, okay, there you go. He does a book called Murder Falcon. And I've been wanting to read that for a while, dude. That looks super cool, yeah. The Jeff Lemire Joker.
Yeah,
nice.
The last thing I have, Jeff Lemire Joker. Andrea Sorrentino is the artist.
I have a digital copy. I want to read it.
I literally picked these up just because of the cover. They were just so interesting. And it was funny because I started reading them yesterday, and I accidentally started with book 2. Oh. And I read half of it, and it seemed like everything made sense. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, wait a second. And then I went back and I finished book 1 and everything. Quick little synopsis without getting into it. The Joker is in Arkham Asylum again. There's a psychiatrist who wants to try and cure him again. And then the Joker is, trying to make this guy insane again. And he tells his origin story. They're even kind of poking fun at like, which origin story do you want to hear? You know what I mean? They're different every time. It feels a lot of like stuff is being retreaded. And I'll let you guys know what I think, but, man, I gotta say, book 2 raises the stakes though.
Really?
And it's making it pretty interesting. I didn't finish book 2 all the way. I have like another like 5 or 6 pages I need to read. But just like halfway through the issue, I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. This is like really, really interesting stuff.
I have digital copies because I have my internship where I get some digital books every so while. But I write for the Daily Fandom, and you guys should go read. I actually did an article on if Watchmen deserves a sequel, so you guys should all go read that. Check it out. Okay. See, more put together thoughts. Yeah. But I would love to read them. I'll check them out for sure. If you're reading them, definitely. Yeah. Did you see the question while you're there? Because that Black Label book is the one I did pick up, and it looks so rad.
No, I didn't. I didn't
try
see
to
it
find
when
you
I
a
was there.
copy.
I'll have to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see if I can find one too. The Black Label books are like $6 an issue, which for a guy,
and they have that magazine size, and I hate buying magazine size bags and a box just for that.
Yeah, it does drive me nuts. I would have to find a magazine size box. I haven't even thought about that.
Yeah,
but usually $6 is like too much for just an indie comic reader like myself. Mm-hmm. But the shop I go to, they do like half prices on a lot of days. And then I saw like on Saturdays, like 50% off all books. I was like, dang.
Yeah. Got to jump on that.
Let me just go pick all these up. Yeah. And then
totally worth
see
it.
how it goes. Yeah,
totally
I think so. So. Whew. That's a doozy, man. That was one of our biggest episodes in a long time.
Yeah.
If not ever.
Hopefully you guys listen to all of it.
Yeah. And let us know what you thought about Watchmen. Were we right? Was I wrong? You know what I mean? Let me know.
It might come down to where we do episode by episode, just breakdown.
There we go. Maybe a little late for the content release, but it'd still be fun to do.
It'd still be fun. Dude,
Still be
Watchmen
fun.
came out like 30 years ago. I don't care. Like, I'll talk
That's
about
a good
this all
point.
day.
That's a good point. Let's do it. All right. Well, we'll see you next time for some Star Wars.
Dark Forces. Or Empire.
Dark Empire.
Thinking of Kyle Katarn.
And maybe, you know what? Even more Star Wars Episode 9 talk. I feel like I still haven't gotten to talk about it fully. So
neither. We just did the COE. We have a lot to... I'll rewatch it before then.
It'll be nice to read this book, which seems like it has some influence on it.
Yeah, I did research as a kid. Real quick backstory. One last story. When I was a kid, I got this encyclopedia of Star Wars characters. And it was an older version. Because, they get updated every 4 years. You know what I mean? And it had this whole biography on Luke Skywalker. And it started talking about the clone of Palpatine. And by that time, episode 2 was about to get released, or maybe it just got released. And I was like, clones? Like, past this prequel stuff? What?
Yeah.
And I looked into it, and Palpatine cloned himself. And so he could continue living on for ever. And it was on some Sith planet and everything. And he corrupted Luke Skywalker and turned him over to the dark side. And I was like, 1, Emperor Palpatine's clone, I'm in.
Yeah.
2, a dark side Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
Please explain to me more.
More or less both things that we saw in the sequel trilogy.
Yes. And that's why once I saw the film and started hearing rumors, I was like, bam, I gotta read this again. I've read it once
20 years ago.
10 years ago. Dude. So I'm so excited to dip into it and read the whole series.
Let's get Star Wars crazy. Whew. All right. Thanks for checking it out. See you guys.
Thanks for hanging, David.